Hello, this is the third part of Imperfection by Neon Zangetsu. Link will be in the description. All author's notes have been removed between chapters. Also, any NSFW scene will be removed. This part will cover chapter 13 to 18. Let the games begin move. Gohan gasped in utter agony, fighting down the urge to protest as the command forced him into action once more, his aching muscles screaming as he pushed himself to stand up again. Despite the relative mastery he had achieved over the Super Saiyan form, all of his wounds screamed at him to stop, begging him to cease the pointless exercise. But still his body blundered on, clambering to its feet just in time to intercept another yet earth-shattering blow, catching the larger man's hand in his smaller palm when it should have shone right through his arm. This time, he actually managed to hold it for a handful of seconds before his opponent overpowered him. He caught sight of that absurdly long hair for only a split second before his adversary backhanded at him, dragging a rough palm across his face with all the force of an atom bomb, catapulting him into another rock formation. The blow didn't have any sort of contempt behind it. He simply didn't want to blow the poor boy's head off his shoulders when he wasn't ready. Despite that, Uzumaki almost winced when Gohan didn't immediately emerge from his tomb of stone. Forget Goku and the other Z-fighters. Chi-Chi would have his balls staked on the wall if she learned her only sign had bit the bullet during a training exercise. There was just something about righteous female fury that made even the most powerful of warrior cringe in dismay. Just the thought was enough to make him cringe. But no, this was necessary. Needed. Move! He barked angrily, reminding Gohan that he had at least 5 seconds to emerge before he came in there after him. An explosion was his answer. The pile of debris disintegrating beneath another outburst of the youth's surprising power. Once more he'd somehow found the strength to stand. Despite his own exhaustion and lack of ki, he still rose. Huh. Who said the kid wasn't a fighter? There was a steely look therein in his eyes, one that hadn't been there a second ago. Naruto smiled. Just a little more. He just needed one more push. Good. His reward was the intensification of the pace, the blows falling like rain in the evening sky around him. Use your anger. Let it all go. Remember what Cell did to all those people. Ah! Naruto deflected a strike aimed at his head, using his other hand to smash through Gohan's guard as though it were made of glass and bringing a knee up into his opponent's chin, sending him tumbling away. It would have been but a trifle for him to pursue and end the fight, but instead he stood his ground and barked out the order once more. Move! The word had barely left his lips, before he quickly charged a ki blast and flung it after Gohan, who righted himself and knocked it away before launching a stream of them back. Naruto didn't even bother to dodge, letting out a ki-infused yell and shattering the barrage of energy attacks as though they were made of naught but glass. Gohan saw this and blanched. Is that all you have, Gohan? Naruto taunted, beckoning him forward with his golden tail. I thought you were a little stronger than that. I'm trying? Not hard enough, you aren't. Ordinarily, it would have been his father training him, urging the young Saiyan to push past his limits in the hyperbolic timer chamber. But this was not the hyperbolic time chamber. His 2 days spent in that strange dimension had been exhausted. There was no dilation of time to help him now. The Cell games were tomorrow, and according to Naruto, he wasn't ready for them. Not in the slightest. Perhaps he had his own reluctance to blame for that one, while his father had easily managed to push past his breaking point and reach the ascended Saiyan state, also known as Super Saiyan 2. Thanks to a few harsh words from Naruto, he himself was only slightly stronger than he'd been before beginning his second day. Yes, Son Gohan had hit a roadblock. He'd achieved total mastery over this Super Saiyan form, but in spite of all his hard work, he simply couldn't progress any further without reaching the next level. Hence the reason for this training. The instant Naruto realized he hadn't unlocked Super Saiyan 2, he'd all but dragged the boy out into the wilderness to train. Chi-Chi be damned, he'd said. You should be stronger than this. So here they were in the middle of nowhere, not a soul to see the one-sided battle raging onward. Gohan was completely outmatched against this Super Saiyan 3. He'd tried nearly every tactic he could think of, even flinging Naruto's own shadow clone technique back at the blazing blonde below him in an attempt to buy himself some time. What he'd failed to realize was that Naruto had mastered that technique long before he'd taught it to him. He easily recognized the doppelgangers and dispatched them as though they were no more than insects. That was the power of this form. And he'd hinted that Gohan had the potential to reach it as well, to ascend to this unbelievably powerful form. Thus far, all he'd ascended to was a complete and utter beating. Naruto was a ruthless taskmaster like Piccolo, all things considered, but just like the Namekian, he wasn't unreasonable. Because he had a bag of senzu beans with him. The stipulation was deceptively simple. Gohan would only be given one should he manage to steal it from the speedy Saiyan. Thus far, he hadn't been able to take one. His fingers hadn't even brushed their bag. Naruto had managed to outfox him in every possible way. And now he struck again. Move! Chastising himself for the simple slip, the son of Goku desperately flung himself aside as a series of narrow energy beams pierced the space he'd just vacated. Too slow. Naruto whispered into existence above him, a well-placed ki sending the poor boy hurtling back down to the earth. With his energy at an all-time low, it was all he could do to sustain his Super Saiyan form, let alone soften the landing with his own ki. Ribs rattled as the young Super Saiyan struck the ground. Naruto was on him an instant, striking at 10 different angles in a single second, battering the boy bloody before flinging him back to the broken earth. Move! Yet again the command came. This time Gohan didn't have the strength to respond. I can't, he rasped out, choking on his own spit. I don't have any more energy. Is that so? A change seemed to come over his mentor then, those Jaden eyes becoming more akin to angry emerald than anything else. It was familiar to a look Piccolo often wore when they trained together. It was an expression he knew all too well. This was worse. It was as if a light had died in the blonde's eyes. He wasn't the pragmatic Saiyan-android hybrid anymore. He was a shinobi, and the look in his eyes bespoke death. That's too bad, Gohan, he sneered, a touch of red energy suffusing his sweeping aura. It seems I have no further use for you then. What pain? That was all Gohan could think as the Super Saiyan 3 sheathed his elbow in the boy's stomach. It was in his every pore, and suddenly he was sticken, paralyzed. Pain flaring like he'd been struck by a bolt of dead lightning in the stomach, Gohan doubled over the fist embedded in his gut. Sweat flew off his hair as it made a forward whipping motion, and bile and a bit of blood was coughed up as a result of the attack, causing blood to well up in his throat. Does it make you angry? Naruto snarled in his ear, his voice layered with anger. Knowing how weak you are. I can't hear you! Like an ant, he was smashed down again, snarling. This was too much. Naruto's power pressed down all around him. It was as if an ocean had settled upon his shoulders, crushing him without so much as a thought. The very act of breathing was a painful act in and of itself. He couldn't handle this power. He was going to die. Is this all you have? Naruto growled, seizing a fistful of golden hair and dragging him off the ground. It's not enough. Whipping his hand around, he slammed the younger Saiyan into the ground with enough force to form a mile-wide crater. You have more. I know you do. So, bring it out. Bring everything out. Everything. He held him there, steadily grinding the boy's face deeper and deeper into the dirt, uncaring for his cries of agony. Everyone will die, Son Gohan. Do you understand me? Your mother, you father, Piccolo, Krillin, everyone. If you don't show me your full power right fucking now, I'm going to kill them. All of them. Slowly. Something broke deep inside of Son Gohan. The strings of his emotions, held taut for so long, suddenly snapped. Something came loose deep within him, welling up despite all attempts to prevent it. Wait, why was he resisting? Why was he holding back at all? Did he want to die? Did he want to lose everything? No, no, no. Throwing caution to the wind, Gohan gave himself to this power, embracing it at the very core of his being as he'd always been meant to do. You. His words were broken but savage, muffled by the earth. What? I said I won't let you! The entire crater was suddenly swallowed up by the brilliant aura of the gold-bathed fighter, thick cutlets of lightning exploding into existence around him, his muscles swelling with power. But even that wasn't enough to free him from the foul grip crushing his skull. Super Saiyan 2 wasn't enough. If anything, Naruto squeezed harder, those large fingers pressing down with enough force to draw blood. Desperate, Gohan dug deeper, plunging headfirst into the well of power he knew he had somewhere deep inside. Naruto had told him countless times that he had great power within him. power even greater than his own. All he had to do was release it, drop all restraints. If he didn't draw it out now, then this would all be for nothing, nothing at all. His body bucked, convulsing with the energy warring within him, stronger than ever before. Kicking and thrashing, scratching and screaming, he hauled it out. Naruto jerked back as the boy erupted into brilliance, all his power pouring forth in a single, monumental scream. Smoke sprayed out from the crater, forcing him to raise a limb and shield himself from the boy's roaring aura of power. For a second, just a second, he wondered if he'd gone too far. Then he remembered what was at stake: 18, Samui, their unborn children, and decided that the ruse had been worth it after all. He had called upon the darkest part of himself, and it had answered, pushing Gohan into a corner until he had no choice but to come out swinging. With an effort, he forced it back into its cage, willing it away as he waited for a sign of the boy's new power. He wasn't disappointed. An unseen wind tore through the crater, revealing the boy's form to the world. Gohan stood taller than he'd ever bore, his hair longer, standing sharper with only a single lock still falling down over his forehead, the rest spilling down his back in a cascade of molten gold. Its color was now a deep saffron's, shimmering with untold energy. Jagged arcs of blue electricity swirled around them both. His eyebrows were gone, deep ridges standing out where his brow had once been. His jaw was set, serious and sober, eyes balefully set on the horizon ahead of him. Naruto felt his own grin grow as he looked on, dropping the menacing facade he'd erected, until this very moment. The boy's powers were raw, ki seething untamed just below the surface, and it was stronger than him. The older scion whistled, his whiskered cheeks pulling themselves taut in a stern smile. Now that's more like that was all he had time to say before the demi-scion's fist cut across his face. Rather, it tried. But Gohan was unused to his new power, and in the crucial seconds it took to adapt, Naruto had already caught the boy's fist in hand and held it away. A spark of pain lanced up his arm and into his shoulders. Shit, the kid barely had a handle on this power, and it already hurt this much. Damn, give him a few years of training and he'd been unstoppable. Even at full strength, he found himself hard-pressed to hold the boy back. The twin Super Saiyan 3s leered at one another for a long moment, neither speaking. Easy there, Tiger. Naruto warned at last, his voice a dangerous growl. Don't lose yourself. Remember who you are. It took a moment for those words to settle in, but gradually the boy's furious expression faded. He made no move to release his hold on the new form, but his aura abated to a less lethal level. You tricked me, he growled in realization, his voice on edge. And it worked swimmingly. Naruto chuckled, sticking out his tongue bedevilingly. You wouldn't have reached this form any other way without risking the lives of your friends. I told you, all you needed was a little push to get there, and you did it. His eyes creased in a smile. I'm proud of you, kid. It wasn't fair. I'm a shinobi. The blonde's deadpan was barely concealed. We do whatever we can to ensure victory, ours or those of another. Wham! Naruto took the next hit stoically, his face turning as the boy's fist creased against it. What was that for? He asked. For insulting my dad, the boy said simply. Are you satisfied? Oh, not really, no. That's the spirit. Naruto said nothing more, he merely smiled and spat out a tooth. It'd grow back anyway. Just like that, the monster was gone. He was the gentle shinobi once more. He was satisfied. He'd stirred a chance in Gohan, one not so easily undone by Chi-Chi or anyone else. That had been his goal all along. Now that Gohan had reached it, there was but one thing left for him to do. I've got one last thing to teach you, kid. Well, you look like shit. Naruto craned his head as he trudged back into Capsule Corp, almost smiling as 18's familiar retort reached his ears. Gohan had pushed him a bit there towards the end before the boy finally got a handle on his incredible power, at least to enough of a degree that he could wield it without imploding. He was well aware of the painful bruises all over his body. From his ripped clothes to the remnant of the acrid fumes that clung to them, he was a pathetic sight. He looked across the way towards her, half expecting to find her finishing up her training. And his jaw dropped. Look, I know you're pregnant, but already. He pointed at the strange dish in her hand as she lounged on the couch. Pickles and ice cream? It's not my fault if I have cravings, she pouted. You're not even showing yet. By the way, Samui piped up, distracting them as she dined on her own odd dish of waffles with ketchup. Yuck! That kid, what was his name? Trunks? I think he made a wish on the Dragon Balls while you two were away, having you bonding moment. Ah, that would explain why the sky had grown dark during Gohan's transformation. That hadn't happened when he'd ascended to this level, so he'd thought it odd at the time, but at least now he knew why. Vegeta. Vegeta. Naruto's only response was a half-hearted shrug. If the kid wanted his father back that badly, fine. Vegeta was no threat to him now, and even if he were, he'd just kill him again. So long as he had 18 and Samui by his side, everything was all right. Besides, it wasn't as though the prince was honestly foolish enough to attack him again. Uzumaki! Hey, he hadn't called him an android at least. Naruto sighed as the door slammed open with a sudden burst of ki, calmly raising a hand to extinguish the blast that followed. His fingers closed around it, snuffing the golden glow out like a harmless candle. Lowering his still smouldering palm, he inclined his head towards the figure standing in the door with a slight smile. Something you wanted, Vegeta? The prince of all 3.5 Saiyans stormed into the room with a growl, fully transformed and ready to fight. And for a moment Naruto thought he would. Instead, he just stood there, silently smouldering in anger as he realized his attack had been negated so easily. One glance at the ex-Jinchuriki's golden hair, jaden eyes, and incredible aura, and it looked as though he might suffer an aneurysm from sheer anger. As it were, a slight sneer creased his face. I understand I have you to thank for my stay in Otherworld. What, they didn't send you straight to hell? Or is it HFIL? I always get the two confused. Once more, the prince's face purpled in anger. That's... Bulma's pregnant again, by the way. Naruto cut in, enjoying his consternation. What? Relax, it's not mine. I'm not like that. Naruto casually inspected his nails as though he could find a non-existent grain of dirt in them. Jiro had been far too meticulous to allow something like that. Pretty sure she's going to name the kid Bra, though. What a name. Ain't that a surprise? You might have another little Super Saiyan on your hands soon. Of course, she won't be able to compete with my girls when they get older, but hey, you can't win them all. Am I right? Vegeta's mind needed a mental reboot. He'd just been hit with so much information that it was difficult to stay angry with the blonde, let alone the fact that this abomination held enough Saiyan DNA to transform into an unstoppable juggernaut, as though it were nothing. Still, the idea of another Air One that apparently hadn't existed in his son's timeline was enough to intrigue him. Children, he said. Well then, his be many times that of any demons spawned by these damned washing machines. Yes, that was it. It was enough to cool the man's anger, if only marginally. We will speak of this later, boy. Naruto saluted smartly. Yes, sir, your royal assholeness. If looks could kill, the last Uzumaki would be a pile of limbs on the floor. Grumbling to himself about toasters and whatnot, the brooding Saiyan stalked back outside. He did not return. So how'd I do? I give it a 9. 18 shrugged, digging out another spoonful of ice cream. What? Naruto whined, despondent. Why not a 10? Because you didn't kick his ass, Samui added primly. Right! There was another silence. So, Can you get me more of this? 18 lazily held out the now empty bowl. When she'd finished it off, she had no idea. Look, I really don't think that stuff's good for you. Get me more, goddammit! Me too. Samui joined in thunderously, quashing any argument he might have attempted. Hi! Naruto scampered to do just that, cringing slightly to himself. He knew better than to argue with a pregnant blonde. Let alone 2. Forget Cell. He was more afraid of his girls. It was with a perfect smile that Cell watched his opponents assemble before the ring he'd created the next evening. They were all here, each and every one of them. Those Saiyans and their half-breeds, Piccolo, and the humans, even 18 and that other lesser model he'd tried to blast the other day. Looking back, he found it hard to believe he'd actually been afraid of her uniting with Naruto. Clearly that had been a mistake on his part. Nothing could touch him now. Certainly not. Vegeta? Had Cell an eyebrow? He would have quirked it. So they'd seen fit to revive him after all. How quaint. If the prince's stoic expression was anything to go by, he'd done quite a bit of powering up since his return to the land of the living, even going so far as to achieve the natural Super Saiyan state, same as Goku and Gohan. He hoped for his sake that he had more than that. The game would be dreadfully boring otherwise. But where was the main event? Where was 21? Where was Naruto? He didn't see him amongst the others. Surely he hadn't decided to run away. Wait, it was faint, but he could sense it. A short fluctuation of power in the distance, growing stronger, approaching rapidly. There, last but not least. Ah, there you are, Naruto. A grin creased his face. And just in time, too. I can hardly wait. He appeared swiftly on the horizon, his aura a strange tinge of goldish red. Naruto. His body tingled with anticipation as the Super Saiyan landed, a stray spark scrawling outward from his form. With the power he'd gained from Broly, his victory was all but guaranteed. He would savor what each of these fools had to offer, and then he would end them. Swiftly, of course. It would only be merciful to kill them quickly after all this planet had given him. So who'll be first? Hey! Cell's eyes cut across the arena, glowering on the fuming form of Hercule. The imbecile had remained silent until now, shocked by so many fighters landing, but he would be ignored no longer. How dare they ignore him like this? Did they have any idea who he was? Now listen up, you ignorant hicks. 3 tick. The so-called champion dropped like a sack of bricks. Naruto's fist descended suddenly, smashing the fool on the back of the head with less than 1% of his power. It was a mercy, really. Cell was in no mood to play games. The poor human would have been atomized if he so much as set one foot in the ring. You're not strong enough, champ, he replied scornfully. Leave this to the professionals. Oh my, the television announcer cried, aghast at Hercule's sudden knockout. This strange newcomer has just dropped the world champion of martial arts like a ton of bricks. Who is this mystery man, this stranger who felled the people's champion with a single blow? Naruto blinked in surprise, completely and utterly baffled as the microphone was thrust before his visage, the camera zooming in for a close-up of his face for all the people of the world to see. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. He waved, grimacing slightly. Hello? What the hell was this thing? He'd never seen a camera before in his life. Whomever this fellow was, he certainly switched loyalties rather quickly. Do you have any words for the people on how easily you defeated the humanity's champion? Because was weak? And do you now plan to defeat Cell yourself? Of course. Baka. 18 groaned, face-palming. We're going to get so much publicity because of this. Yes, but he's our Baka, Samui seconded with a slight smile. What is that thing, anyway? That is a camera. And a camera is another facepalm. That aside, it's time to get down to business. Ignoring the persistent mic-wielding man, Naruto stepped into the ring. This was it. He would be the first to fight. Despite Goku's eagerness to take on Cell's newfound power, he was determined to have his turn first. That loud fool, Hercules something or other, would live to see the next day. Maybe. We all know what happens when an ant tries to stand up to a hurricane, don't we? Imagine the fate of Earth's greatest champion, if you will, when forced to try and face such a foe so superior to him. Nuff said. Are you first, Naruto? Cell sighed as he beheld his adversary, purple eyes twinkling in the full moonlight. Such a pity. I would have liked to save the best for last. He was so very glad he'd decided to hold the games at night rather than the afternoon. He felt it lent a more menacing air to the fate of Z-fighters, forced to face him one by one until the shadow that was his perfection purged them from the world. How very fitting. If the best of the bunch wanted to be the first to die, then who was he to refuse him? It would only serve to cause his friends to despair. He could just see their faces now. As if sensing that very thought, Naruto laughed. It was a deep, throaty sound. A spark of red flitted through those jaden eyes, and for a moment, just a moment, the mighty android felt a presence. A cold chill draped its pall across him, eliciting a slight shiver from the supposedly unfeeling piece of perfection. I'm going to crush you, it said, snarling in vicious delight. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to mince you. Cell blinked, wondering at the voice he'd heard. How odd. Must have been his imagination. Surely there wasn't another consciousness trapped within the man. That was preposterous. Even if Dr. Gero had done such a thing, he was superior. He was Cell. No disembodied voice would rattle him. Naruto breathed out once, exhaling a thin cloud of steam into the night sky. Sorry to disappoint you. Disappoint me? Ha! Dr. Gero's second greatest creation readied himself for battle, sliding 1 foot forwards, arms raising at his sides. Far from it. This is everything I've wanted and more. We've become stronger, the both of us, since we last met. I can't wait to test out this new perfect body of mine. This our place! Our battle. To the victor goes the spoils. This wrecked little planet, and all who inhabit it. The tension seemed far too thick. Not even the sharpest knife could hope to cut it. Then what are you waiting for? This. The green android grinned merrily, making a swiping motion with his finger. Ding! Scarce had he spoken than Naruto flashed away, vanishing in a small thunderclap. Zip! Cell blinked, momentarily feigning shock. This was part of the game after all. There was no point in playing if he couldn't enjoy himself. There you are! He raised a hand over his back, narrowly catching the electric blue blur snapping towards his head. Beneath them, the ring groaned in pain, a tiny crack etching itself into the stone surface. Naruto held back a snarl when he realized he'd been blocked, his aura spiking dangerously as he struggled against the hand locked around his leg. Cell's grip was surprisingly strong, but not unbreakable. He tore his foot free and did a 360, violently smashing his head into his opponent's unprotected neck, vaguely aware of the announcer shouting some more gibberish to an unseen audience. He really was curious about that. Oh, right. In his curiosity, he'd nearly forgotten about the fight. And chest! He snarled, driving a fist into Nrr. Cell grunted, genuinely surprised by the unorthodox maneuver, cringing against the attack. Naruto didn't waste any time, driving the base of his knee into the dark demon's back, intended to cripple him with a single blow and end him with the next. And he would have too, if Cell hadn't vanished into thin air. A slight rustle of movement was his only warnings. Then fist met fist and elbow greeted elbow as the green android fell on him in a flurry of blows. To the naked eye, their attack was little more than a blotted blur, but to those of the Z-fighters, nearly a dozen blows exchanged in an instant. Not bad, Naruto. He rubbed a hand against his shoulder. It seems you've managed to increase your power quite a bit since last we met. I may actually enjoy myself. Shall we continue? The blonde's only remark was twofold. Super Kaioken. The ring buckled beneath him with these words, cratering outward beneath the sudden explosion of power. Still higher, the aura raged, large chunks of masonry floating upward as he rapidly ascended to new heights. That saffron gold of his Super Saiyan 3 aura mingling with the trademark red of the Kaioken. Smirking, he beckoned and frowning, Cell advanced. It was a complete reversal. Naruto made a massive mockery of the larger warrior, sidestepping rapid kicks and powerful punches with ease, all the while leaving his arms crossed on his chest. When the hybrid finally decided to block, it jarred every bone in Cell's body, but not nearly as badly as when he received a single kick to the middle of his back, making his teeth rattle violently as he skidded across the tiled surface of the ring. When he got up, he actually felt pain. Pain flooding this perfect body of his. Granted, he wasn't yet fighting at full strength, but still. Another punch met a similar fate, his fist shattering a large portion of the ring when it failed to hit its elusive target. What's the matter, Cell? Naruto called, whispering into existence behind him. Is this all you have? I'm not even warmed up yet. We'll just see about that. An eerie green aura Broly's aura overcame the perfect android, his muscles bulking ever so slightly beneath the strain. Not enough to affect his speed, but clearly enough to increase his new abilities tenfold. Cell charged the smiling Saiyan, who leapt into the air with only the smallest instant to spare. He'd clearly underestimated his opponent's new speed. Before Naruto could spin around for the defensive, Cell overwhelmed him with a series of well-struck fists to the stomach. For the first time since their fight had begun, the whiskered warrior actually hissed in pain. One hand drifted to his stomach, cradling what had to be a broken rib even with Jiro's modifications. How wrong he was. Because the blonde was smiling. Now that's more like it. His smile was light-hearted, his grin only growing. I was curious to see if you were holding back. Seems I was right. You have no idea. Then he was gone again. So much for the warm-up. Dr. Jiro's greatest creation spun around with a sneering laugh, his form rippling as the blonde's fist hurtled through the space he'd just occupied. After image, Naruto vanished again as well, his predecessor's heel phasing off course as he disappeared for a second time. That was all the Z-fighters beheld before the shockwaves started silent explosions, shearing through the air over their heads in rapid succession, the earth quaking in fear under their feet, as the two titans duked it out. With the fate of Earth on the line! Chapter 14. Perfection. The moon trembled. Her face shone down on the sundered scene of battle, quivering in silent fear as two gods battled it out with one another, the fate of her sister planet firmly on the line. Shockwaves shook their world to its very core. Each blow, no matter how accurate or otherwise, split the terrain and sent sparks skittering. The ring lay in ravaged ruin beneath their feet, wholly forgotten by its combatants, shouts and grunts of exertion prevailing over the other sounds as they took themselves to task and unleashed all hell upon the planet. Lightning shot through the grief-stricken sky, bolts of heavenly wrath making themselves known as the pair tore the planet asunder. No one could stop it, could stop them. To step between these two now guaranteed certain death. Not even Goku would dare to interfere. As if he could. Earth's greatest hero could no more interfere than he could stop the moon from setting and the sun rising. Any attempt to interfere between these twin titans would only result in death on his part. He knew this to be true, and so too did a certain prince. No, I was a fool! Vegeta cursed himself as he watched the wicked warriors war across the ring, damning his pride for what felt like the umpteenth time. I should have finished him when I had the chance. He spoke not of Naruto, but of Cell, the malevolent monstrosity that made the planet shake with each passing. In letting him absorb that android he damned himself, damned them all, he had absolutely no idea that the events that followed would lead up to this. It was almost an insult that he'd been revived at all, because now he could see. Now he truly knew just how far he had surpassed him. It galled him enough already to know that Kakarot and his boy had reached a new plateau of power, but this, it was maddening. He couldn't match this power. He doubted that anyone save Gohan would be able to stave off Cell. And maybe not even then. Naruto seemed to be the only one capable of keeping up with him now. And if Naruto fell, he'll win. Gohan growled, his Jaden eyes never once leaving the battlefield. Vegeta risked a glance at the Demisian and bit back a scowl. Ever since Kakarot's son come back from his training yesterday, the boy had been changed, somehow. He'd become hardened. The gentle youth who did not like to hurt was still locked away in there somewhere, but what he saw now was a Saiyan warrior, harsh and angry, no longer afraid to toss everything aside and fight if it meant protecting the ones he loved. No matter the cost, Goku was of a similar mind. On one level, he was proud of his son for having surpassed him. Someday, he'd be able to defend the Earth in his stead. But on the other, a very small part of him worried that Naruto might have pushed the boy just a little too far. Speaking of Naruto, hey, Naruto is on our side, right? Krillin gulped, gawping as another portion of the ring disintegrated, showering them in kai and debris. The way the shinobi was carrying on terrified him. It was as if he didn't care for anything but the fight itself and nothing less. Everything else was expendable. I mean, ow. He cringed when a gloved hand swatted him on the back of his bald head. 18 scowled down at him, her open palm still hanging menacingly over his cranium. It didn't take long for him to realize she was responsible. Hey, what the heck was that for? Be quiet, she sniffed angrily. I don't see you out there fighting Cell. Yeah, but I was just... And of course we're on your side. We wouldn't be here with you dolts otherwise. Poor Krillin couldn't do anything more than cringe. Now, Samui soothed. What she means to say is if Cell wins, we lose. Let's just take it easy. Vegeta glowered at the sight. Damn you, androids! Scowling, the prince returned his attention to the fray. Each strike made Mother Earth whimper. Every clash created weeping's wounds in her earthen skin. Naruto didn't care. Neither did Cell. Nothing could stop them. Nothing could dissuade them from this feverish fight. The very idea of abandoning the battle was a concept neither could conceive. They fought with murder and malice in their eyes, pinnacle of their powers emerging and waning, fluctuating, then spiking as they tore at one another, ripping their surroundings to shreds. They did not care for their environment nor anyone in it. Nay, more than once an errant ki blast came dangerously close to vaporizing one of the spectators. No apologies were given. No amends made. There was no time for weak words, only action and reaction, a never-ending sequence of events that spiraled swiftly towards the center. Because one of the powers was faltering, flagging, and growing steadily weaker with each and every instant. It wouldn't be much longer now. Sooner or later, that individual would give out. But until then, higher! Out of the black, a blur of gold and green collided as one, white knuckles mashing against tan, furious fists flying in a tandem that would have put even the mightiest of martial artists to shame. Knee met knee, heel swung against heel. Every aspect of their bodies used to inflict pain upon the other. Limbs were torn away and regrown instantly, entire organs ripped, obliterated, only to be restored seconds thereafter and shorn away again. It was brutality at its best, violence incarnate, and it showed no sign of stopping anytime soon. Yes, that's more like it. Cell laughed boisterously as they twirled apart, a silent rumble accompanied their separation. You truly have exceeded all my expectations and more, Naruto. He paused, knuckling a trickle of blood away from his chin with his good arm, his delighted grin growing more maddening as everyone looked on. He stared down at the severed stump that had once been his left limb, obliterated just below their elbow in a swathe of tattered flesh. Once the idea of losing an arm would have infuriated him to no end. Now he merely laughed. To think that one of Dr. Gero's own creation would give me this much of a challenge? He continued, his smile brightening into a sneer. It's such a shame the rest of these fights won't be this good. An errant idea, the slightest thought, was all it took to restore the ruined appendage, leaving him complete and whole once more. Naruto turned aside and spat, expelling a wad of bloody spit from his mouth, refusing to reply. Sweat burned in his eyes. His uniform lay battered and torn, stained with sweat from his exertions against the mechanical monstrosity. The jagged hair of his Super Saiyan 3 form bristled with unrestrained energy, the full of his power struggling to stay at its apex in spite of his own imperfection. It was like trying to pull teeth. For each instant he was able to hold on to his energy, his body suffered, muscles tearing themselves apart beneath the combined energies of his Super Saiyan body. For all his newfound powers, his control was still as tenuous as ever, all his energy threatening to slip right through his fingers when he needed it most. But as they say, all good things must come to an end. The air was suddenly alive with ki, thick cutlets of energy swooping down at his unsuspecting head. Caught off guard, he suffered the full brunt of the blast, crashing down to the ring below, barely bracing himself before his outstretched palms smashed into the already fractured floor. All you're mine. Cell was suddenly upon him, his fists a blur of white and mottled green, leaving the hapless hybrid helpless to do anything but defend. Forcing him back until he could feel his boots brushing the edge of the ring, feet seeking traction where there was none to be had, his opponent sneered and swung down once more, certain his victory was finally at hand. And perhaps it was. Even with the might of the Kaioken backing him in addition to his own flagging reserves, Naruto knew he was going to take the next hit, whether he liked it or not. The only question remained, could he return the favor? Time slowed to a fraction of its former self. He watched the next blow unfold in a series of slow frame-by-frame movements. There! This was going to hurt like hell, but he was certain he could stop his predecessor from hurling him out of bounds. And then it was over and fate flowed on. Now! Cell snarled, fists snaking out and shattering the ground, Naruto only jumping forward at the last moment and avoiding a quick death. Instead of barreling into his unprotected face and snapping his neck like the fragile twig it was, the android's crackling fist plunged into his stomach, sheathing itself to the elbow. Painful didn't even begin to describe it, that bone-jarring sensation of having a fist literally buried in your intestines and brushing up against your heart. But it didn't kill Naruto. Nay, the whiskered warrior had endured the blow stoically and rooted himself to the ring. Smirking, he swung upwards, driving his own clenched knuckles into the android's unsuspecting gullet. Now it was Cell's turn to scream, a roar of undiluted rage as a tan limb stabbed into his armor, cutting him like butter and bending his body double. Gurk! He got him. Trunks crowed proudly behind him, the young demi-scion confident that the final blow had been dealt. It hadn't. Yes, that's the way. Cell grunted, raising his gaze, a sliver of blood snaking its way through his clenched teeth. To think that you'd actually make me feel pain. He was suddenly gone, streaking upward in a bolt of light, saving himself the humiliation of being thrown from the ring. Launching himself upright in fierce pursuit, Naruto unexpectedly found himself face to face with the visage of his adversary, the narcissistic bot, having stopped midway through his ascent. Those violet eyes regarded him intently, their owner's bleak body framed against the full moon, wings spread behind him like an avenging angel. "You nearly fell out of the ring," Cell sneered, the words drifting down to him as though they were from on high. "If you had, I would have been declared the winner of this little match of ours." A wry smile tugged at that pale face. "Is the game too hard for you, 21? Shall I make it easier?" Naruto was forced to watch, dumbstruck as his predecessor extended a hand. "Perhaps this will make things a little more interesting. I am tired of being confined to that ring anyway." "As are you, I trust." "Hold on." Jaden eyes bulged, comprehension dawning in those narrow orbs as he sensed the build-up of ki. "Wait! What are you?" Impossibly, the malevolent machine's grin only grew. "Oh, and you might want to tell your friends to clear the area." Hey! The Super Saiyan whipped around, the word exploding from him in a violent shout. "Get away from the ring! Now!" Everyone was quick to heed his warning. Everyone save a group of rather pesky humans who just stood there dumbfounded. Naruto felt a muscle jump in his jaw. He'd never been one to stand by and let innocents die. Even when they deserved it, it would be so easy, terribly so, to just let those posers perish in Cell's blast. Really, it would. And yet... Oh, good damn it! Against his better judgment, the blonde juggernaut streaked downward, crossing the space between heaven and earth in the blink of an eye. Hercule gaped, flabbergasted, having only just coming back to his senses by the time the whiskered warrior phased into existence before him. "What the? Move, you dolts!" Naruto swung around, hurling Hercule and his entourage away with a well-placed ki. He could only pray it was enough. Indeed, that was all he had time for before a blinding explosion slammed into his unprotected back, consuming him in pain and the inferno. All the world erupted around him, blackness creeping up at the edges of his vision as Cell's blast took its toll, tearing great swaths of destruction through it, both the ring and himself, sparing only one. "Naruto!" Samui screamed into the light. 18 simply groaned, a small hand pressing into her face. "That idiot! The fool!" Cell swore as he lowered his hand, scowling into the crater that had once housed his creation. Why would he try and save them? Did he think I was bluffing? Where once there had been a ring, now there was a hole. Nothing more could be said. The ring was simply gone. It had ceased to be in this world. Those violet eyes were left peering, and his mind reeling, all the while tracking, moving, searching for any sign of life. If that fool had gotten himself killed and deprived him of his amusement, okay. Ouch, a voice groaned. "If this is what I get for saving civilians from now on, you can fucking forget it." Cell snapped around just in time to witness the rebirth of his nemesis, watching spellbound as the hybrid leaped from the dirt like some sort of Saiyan undead, reappearing only yards away from the Z-fighters. A swift glance was all it took to assure him that his enemy was alive and well. Talho, his back had been bloodied by the blast. He raised a hand slowly, haltingly pushing a stray strand of jagged hair out his face. His muscles shrieked at the motion, fingers twitching spasmodically from the effort. "It's no good," he mused, forcing them into a fist. "My body's losing too much energy. I need to end this soon." "So you survived?" Naruto grunted at Vegeta's angry snort. "So sorry to disappoint you, your royal assholeness." A ways behind him, Krillin snickered. The proud prince sneered, ignoring the bald monk. "Just remember, boy, I'll be the one to kill you." There was a silence. Finally, Naruto deadpanned. Remind me why I let Trunks revive you again?" The purplet made a squelching sound. Likewise, the slow purpling of his father's face was priceless. Now it was Goku's turn to laugh. "Damn it, Kakarot," Vegeta snarled. "I'll kill you too." "I'm sorry?" The Super Saiyan gasped out between bouts of side-splitting laughter. "It's just so funny." Naruto stared at the two rivals for a moment and shook his head. Only Goku could laugh like this, unflinching in the face of danger despite the fact that they might never live to see another sunrise. And still, he hadn't changed, hadn't given up in the hopes that the day might somehow still be won. Damn these Saiyans. He was actually starting to like them a little bit. "Do you need a senzu bean?" Gohan asked as his second mentor stowed past him. "No. Another sad failure of this body. As much as he was Saiyan and Shinobi, he was still part machine. Korin's beans wouldn't do a thing for him. Perhaps when he was perfect, they would be able to affect him. But in this flawed state, such a thing was impossible. I can't take one, remember? Part android. He chuckled at the boy's aggrieved expression. Don't look at me like that. I'll be just fine. Slap. Everything froze as an open-palmed smack collided with his face. Okay, maybe not. That was all he had time for before Samui and 18 got a hold of him. You, stupid, selfish idiot! Baka. Naruto no baka. The former berated him tearfully, grabbing him by the lapels of his guy and shaking him to and fro like a hapless ragdoll. What were you thinking? Were you trying to get yourself killed or something? Do you want me to raise this child as a single mother? What tilde you tilde talking tilde about tilde? Naruto groaned as she jarred him back and forth, Jaden eyes rolling back in his head like a pair of marbles when she finally ceased her shaking. I was just being a good Samaritan for crying out loud. There's nothing wrong with Of course there's something wrong with that. 18 took that opportunity to give him a few extra shakes for good measure. You're not allowed to get yourself killed, 21. I will not raise this child on my own. Do you hear me? 18 tilde, you are a tilde making tilde me tilde dizzy. Lucky bastard, Krillin groused. To think that could have been him she was fussing over. If that's what you humans call love, leave me out of it, Piccolo muttered aside. Gohan didn't very much understand it himself, and he wouldn't, not for another 7 years. For now, the young Diem Saiyan was simply baffled that someone as powerful as Naruto was allowing himself to be shaken as if were no more than a powerless peon. Perhaps it was some innate inner power all females possessed. Like his mother? She could be really scary sometimes. Even with his newly learned skill of shadow clones, she very nearly hadn't let him come with Dad today. Not that she would have been able to stop him, though. It was a near thing that Naruto insisted Gohan was stronger than all of them. Unbidden, he thought back to a young girl he'd met several days ago, before Naruto had nearly beaten him within an inch of his life. Someone who had expressed an interest in his well-being and even of seeing him again once the nightmare of Cell finally ended. Lime. Would she be like that when she was older? He wondered. Gohan hoped not. Regardless, this confirmed his earlier hypothesis. Girls were scary. If the three of you are quite done with the comedy routine, I have a match to finish. Cell huffed, drawing their attention once more, thankfully with words instead of a beam. I'm beginning to lose my patience. We do, don't we? Naruto turned, shaking himself free of 18 with a kindly glance. Be right with you. He turned then, capturing the blonde's lips in a scorching kiss that had male viewers everywhere green in envy, followed by those of a pouting Samui. I won't die, he soothed them. For promise. Are you finally ready to finish this, 21? Cell called out, alighting a few yards away, his gaze sweeping across these barren lands. It's quite an improvement, don't you think? Now the whole desert is our ring for us to do with as we please. Let's say the last one standing wins the game. In a flicker of motion, his fearsome foe stood before him once more. You shouldn't have done that earlier. Naruto growled as he landed, eyes flashing a dangerous and ungodly red. I believe I told you exactly what would happen if you put my precious people in harm's way again. All those words earned him was another laugh. Ah, yes. Something about tearing my head off and shoving it someplace the sun doesn't shine. Emerald eyes narrowed. Something like that. Right, the android shot back, a glimmer of amusement revealing itself in his sinister smile. That's enough talking, 21. Now it's time to continue the game. What do you say we kick things up a notch or two? I think it's time you stopped holding back and showed me what you are truly capable of. Naruto frowned. Something about the way he'd said that. It sounded familiar. Why are you still holding back, idiot? Shaking that thought aside, he leaned forward, boots gritting against the ground. Then he was gone. Way ahead of you! Cell's gaze snapped aside as his adversary vanished in a crackle of unseen motions, just as a pair of power-swollen knuckles to smash down into his head from above. Even as his skull struck the soil, he was wrapped in motion, his heel crackling outward in an electric green blur to spear the oncoming shinobi, flinging him down into the dirt beside him. Grunting, both men shook themselves and rubbed at their now aching sore jaw, dirt and debris rolling off their bodies from this brief dirt nap. Cell scowled at him, and in that gaze, Naruto saw a familiar emotion. Annoyance. He almost laughed. Well, this explains a lot. What's so funny? Cell frowned, incensed by his amusement. He didn't like that look in the blonde's eye. It was nostalgic somehow. Something in him longed to cross fists with the blonde once more to prove that he was truly superior. Something that stemmed from more than just the sea and cells inside him. He didn't understand it. What was this feeling? This exhilaration? It went far beyond mere battle lust. Something in his very cellular structure demanded that he crush the opponent standing before him for this slight. What the devil was going on here? Oh, it's nothing. Naruto smiled, scrubbing a bit of blood out of his eyes with the back of hand as he clambered to his feet. It's just, I finally realized how alike we truly are. It's a crying shame, really. You could have done so much good for the Earth, Sasuke. He was treated to a rare sight then. The mighty Cell was stricken speechless. What? His frown only deepened at the blonde's grin, a gorgeous streak of white in the night. Sasuke, who are you babbling about? Up on the overlook, Samui very nearly guffawed. I thought it was strange when I had a vision of him before, Naruto continued amicably, his grin growing as the demonic destroyer looked on. But this confirms it. He laughed then, mirth bubbling out of him. Looks like Samui and I weren't the only one to be brought back, team. But this? At least my body looks like me. You got brought back as an insect. And now you're an overgrown chauvinist with pale-ass skin. Ha! It seemed as if the tables had been turned. Naruto looked as though he were about to fall down laughing, whilst Cell's skin seemed appeared to be turning a boiling red in embarrassment. Who or what is this, Sasuke? I am Cell. Enough of your misbegotten delusions. Wow. Naruto snickered. You don't even remember your own name, do you? I feel sorry for you. Rah! Sasuke? Goku blinked, baffled as Cell set upon the bemused blonde with renewed fury. Who's that? 18 shrugged. Don't look at me. An old enemy. Samui supplied with a slight smile. Thinking about the avenging Uchiha reminded her of how she and Naruto had come to be together in the first place. God, I can't believe I didn't make the connection before. That arrogance. The belief that he's better than anyone else. The perfect life form. It all makes sense. Cell had to be created from something. It seems Sasuke's cells were the original template, before the rest of yours were added. Whatever Jiro did to him must have obliterated his memories. Still, if Naruto says that thing is his old teammate, then he probably is. Does this change anything? Piccolo frowned. If Cell was an acquaintance of Naruto's, then their staunchest ally might become their greatest enemy. Hardly. Samui sniffed, offended by the inquiry. If anything, Naruto's going to beat him harder, though he might try to redeem him. And let's not forget what Cell did to the two of us. 18 added primly. Naruto's not the sort to let something like that slide. Gah! Cell's snarl caught everyone's attention as a mountainous rock disintegrated in the distance. I am not Sasuke. I am Cell, the ultimate life form, perfection incarnate, and you will address me as such. Right. Naruto sighed, wiping a mirthful tear from his eyes. I'm done. Then he snorted. Sasuke, stop calling me that. Naruto's laughter ended abruptly as Cell's fist finally found his face, snapping his neck backwards in a brutal backhand, followed by the rest of him. Just like that, his good mood dissolved. Cell shouldn't have been able to get a shot like that in so easily. Shit! His energy was dropping rapidly now. He barely had enough to maintain Super Saiyan 3 anymore. I wonder if Goku and the others will be able to entertain me. He grinned, reclaiming his footing, facing forward once more. It would be such a disappointment if you were the strongest. You'll just have to wait and see for yourself, came the reply as his opponent flitted back into view. Still, this has been quite the battle. Hasn't it? He grinned at his obstinate opponent, this implacable foe who had pounded so many dents into his perfect body, scuffed his almighty armor as though it were made of cardboard. And throughout it all, he'd only smiled. This was it. This was the challenge he'd sought. Their powers were almost entirely equal. Yes, it was irksome that he had been mistaken for this Sasuke fellow, but putting that transgression aside, it was everything he had hoped for and more. Now, let us end this. Let's! When the cyborgs collided once more, everyone expected it to be for the last. This time, neither let go of the other. Naruto seized hold of Cell's palms, and the latter took possession of his own hands, gritting their teeth as their struggle immediately resumed once more. Screams of exertion pierced the gloom as their powers flared. Naruto's great golden aura vying with the nearly unlimited green power cell had stolen from Broly. Their screams pitched into roars of anger, the terrain splintering beneath their boots as the combined energies tore the planet yet another blistering crater in her flesh. Wah! They're even! Trunks balked, trembling slightly as their erect bodies bit into the earth. Not only are they equal in power, but now they're equal in speed as well. Vegeta was helpless but to glower. What is the secret to that boy's power? Goku whistled. This is unreal. What's the matter, 21? Cell sneered as they grappled, straining for dominance. I can feel you slipping. That's not true. His final word ended in a devastating headbutt, followed by a series of punches that seemed to tear the very fabric of reality itself, the limbs bending and warping at insane angles as they vied against one another. Pain punched through him like a knife, but still he drove on, battering Cell from every angle. He refused to allow himself to stop. Not here. Not now. Doing so would doom him. But then Cell was gone, 2 fingers pressed up against his forehead, crackling with untold power. Special beam! Naruto swore and folded both hands in front of his face, forming a distinctive X shape with his palms. A tiny bead of light gathered within and swelled outward, growing larger with each passing moment. He could barely see Cell's sneer over the radiance of his recently learned technique, shinobi-turned android leering at him over the light of his own stolen meet the spiraling beam. Krillin blanched. That's way too big. Masenko cannon. The twin attacks collided head-on and became as one, the brilliant beams battering against one another brutally and shredding the landscape for miles in either direction. Naruto grimaced as he found himself being nigh but beaten back by his opponent. He couldn't hold it. Every fibre in his being ached, his kai dropping with each passing second. It was just too much. Cell's spiraling beam ploughed straight through his, scattering its kai to the wind and smashing into the super shinobi head-on. Naruto gasped as he was tossed around the burning vortex of power like a glider in a hurricane. Damn it! A gasp fled from his lips as his back barreled through one boulder, then another, and another, and another still, his rapidly retreating form carving an angry swerve through the ground as Cell's attack tore into him like a thing alive, shredding his GI to pieces. When the light show had finally settled down, Cell lowered his steaming fingers and walked casually over to Naruto's sprawled form. Such a pity. He sighed aggrievedly, addressing the cooling corpse at his feet. And here I thought you would... Naruto's leg lashed out like lightning, booting him backwards. The blonde was suddenly up again, eyes red and full of wrath. Not done yet. Yes, that's how it should be. Then they raced to collide once more in a tangle of feet and fists. There we go, Cell enthused, blocking Naruto's rapid volley of strikes. Whoa, your attacks are getting faster. One uppercut got through, snapping Cell's head backwards. Slowly, though, it tilted forwards again, Cell grinning as a small trail of blood ran down from the side of his mouth. Now that's more like it, but I know you can do better. He swung a return blow, knocking the Saiyan cyborg to the ground and swooping down after him as swiftly as his design would allow. He could see his adversary gingerly getting back up, cringing slightly as he favoured his right leg. Naruto stared up at him solemn and sad, his body broken, battered, eyes red and narrow. Once more, he willed at his aching body, the energies of Super Saiyan and the red power warring within him for a final time. Kakaioken? Crimson burst about his body, the all-consuming aura wrapping around those battered muscles once more, infusing him with borrowed power. Grimacing at the straying, he brought both hands up, palms straddling either sides of his face. Too late, Cell Sasuke realized what was about to happen, a blinding radiance rushing up to greet his unshielded eyes, searing into his red retinas. Solar flare! After that, the only warning he had of the blonde's passage into the realm of obscurity was a quiet rustle. Zip! Cell snarled, his violet gaze burned a blinding white, desperately casting about for his adversary. Trickster! Where had he gone this time? He soon had his answer. Give up? The android could only grunt as strong hands seized him from behind, shearing off his wings and forcing him face first into the dirt. Naruto had him by the arm and the throat, a large palm wrapped around his neck as if it were no more than a harmless twig, ready to be broken at the slightest provocation. Cell growled, impotent in his fury. Let go, you. Give up. Naruto's rough voice ground out over his head, that large limb forcing him deeper into the dirts. You've given me a good fight, Sasuke, and as much as I might have hated you, you've taught me something, given me a power I might never have known otherwise. Thanks to you, I have the strength to protect my precious people, so that no harm might ever come to them again. So give up. You're running low on energy, and so am I, at any rate. Let's call an end to this game. Cell balked, disbelieving. Perhaps he was right. Destroying the Earth was all well and good in his mind, but this planet had given him so much, and if those fighters arrayed against him were anything to measure by, it'd give him much more in the future. Perhaps Dr. Jiro had been wrong. Perhaps he didn't have to be perfect. Perhaps it wouldn't be so bad having someone who could match him. Perhaps not. The sudden realization that he was even considering himself to be imperfect brought a wave of rage to his mind with the ferocity of a great and dark tempest. Despite his opponent's mercy towards him, Naruto looking in his eyes, pleading for him to stop, the anger won over Cell, and he yanked his arm out of the warrior's gentle grip. A pinprick of light leapt gathered at the tip of his outstretched finger, growing larger and larger still with each second it held in this world. And then it happened. As Naruto turned, stumbled, still reeling from the sudden refusal. Cell struck. No! He snarled, defiant to the end. Never! Then the death beam burst from his finger, spearing the blonde in the chest, into his heart. Well, shit, that backfired. Choking, the whiskered warrior fell, his transformation deserting before he even hit the ground. Everything was growing dark. Cold. So very cold. Why couldn't he feel anything? Somewhere in the distance, he could have sworn that he heard Samui and 18 scream. No! Words exploded from Gohan's throat in a furious, heart-wrenching scream alongside those of the androids. His throat was torn raw by the sight of the Naruto's death, eyes glistening with unshed tears. In the short time that he had known the blonde, he had seemed like a gentle sort, always acting to preserve life, to protect it, and now his life was gone. Snuffed out like a candle in the winds. Sanity abandoned him, rationality deserting his mind in an instant. Naruto was down. Senzu beans didn't work on him. The Dragon Balls wouldn't be able to bring him back. He was gone. Somewhere behind him, 18 was screaming. A wordless keening sound that sent his heartstrings to snapping. Samui simply stood there, still as stone, her wide eyes wider still, tears spilling over the edges of those deceptively delicate lashes. He'd never seen an android cry before. He didn't even think it was possible. But Samui and 18 were weeping, because they'd loved Naruto. And now he was dead. His father and all the others stood there, spellbound by the sudden demise of their comrade. And Cell was laughing. Well, that's one down. Sneering, he turned his gaze towards the cliff. Does anyone else want to be a martyr today? Or do I have to pick one of you at random? Goku sensed the sudden stirring in his son, too late. Don't! Cell! Gohan never heard his father's cry. He was already screaming forward, having transformed into a Super Saiyan 3 before he'd even left the ground. You animal! The bio-android whirled at this sudden shout, violet eyes bulging as the youngest member of the Sun family pounced upon him in a streak of golden light. Nothing happened. Gohan growled as he found his frontal assault stalled. A forearm forcibly interposing itself between himself and his enemy. So, he sneered, the limb trembling slightly as he staved off the younger Saiyan's attack. It seems we have our next victim, Gohan snarled. I'll kill you. Up. The world came back to Uzumaki Naruto in fits and starts. He could feel himself breathing, tiny gasps fleeing from his lips, blood-bleached teeth clenching in absolute agony. Even the tiniest of movements sent a shiver of numbing coldness through his body, a body that didn't have much time left. He could hear the sounds of battle raging around him, titanic explosion rocking the landscape, reduced to little more than meager rumbles within his deafened ears. Et up! Naruto groaned. All that emerged was a weak-sounding hiss. Get up, goddamn you! A familiar voice demanded somewhere out of his sight. You can't die on me. Not like this. Gradually he became aware of hands holding him, struggling to pull him off the ground. A glimmer of strength returned to him. He gasped, blue eyes snapping open. The first thing he saw was scarlet, everywhere. Holy shit! That was a lot of blood. And who? Samui? What? Naruto coughed out a wad of blood and struggled to his knees, trying to prevent his body from shutting down. Too little, too late. He could feel it. The cybernetics that kept him alive were disintegrating, dying with each passing second. It was only through sheer stubbornness that he was still alive, and even then it wouldn't last but a handful of seconds. Even now, everything was growing dim. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! He was going to die again, and this time no miracle of science would be there to bring him back. Samui was there, holding him, and she was glowing. Wait, glowing? Naruto froze. What are you doing? 18 wanted to do it, she whispered, her voice echoing softly. I couldn't let her. She really does love you, you know. So much. You didn't. Naruto was choking now, praying she hadn't done what he thought she did. What did you do? The only thing I can do, came the reply, her stoic face creasing slightly in a sad smile. Giving you a second chance. Samui, it really was nice being able to see you again. She continued on, ignoring him, an angelic beacon in the night. Even if it was for a little while, I enjoyed it. It was cool. No! Don't! Naruto struggled as she grabbed him from behind, but she resisted, and in his dying state, he didn't have the strength to pry her off. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Her words remained stern yet softened at his tears. She reached upward, cupping his cheek with a hand. If it means a life without you, then that's not one worth living. At least this way I'll be a part of you and my child with me, forever and always. Samui! Samui wrapped her arms around him, her fingers splayed against his chest. Already he could feel her fading, her body and the child within, ceasing to be. Despite his best efforts to resist, they still continued to vanish. His body didn't have any safeguards against someone who was willing to be absorbed. He couldn't even bring himself to move. He was so weak. It was all he could do just to look her in the eye, to see those teary orbs squint in a final farewell, a final goodbye. I love you, she whispered, and then she was gone. So were Naruto's wounds. His heart pumped blood once more, his wound closing as though it had never been. It all happened so swiftly. One moment she had been embracing him from behind, the next she was gone. The very essence that was her being merging with his. Something in him died in that instant. The wall that had been holding back his power crumbled. The dam that had prevented him from fully harnessing this body, this power fell away, letting the floodwaters flow free, releasing everything. In that very instant, his gaze beheld the full moon, drinking deep of its sad visage, as though the lunar orb itself empathized with his pain. Goodbye. A lone tear trickled out of his eye, trailing down his cheek. And still he stared at the moon, his tail twitching spasmodically, a small sob escaping his lips. Why? Why wasn't he strong enough? Why had she left him again? Why? He'd been so happy to have her back, delighted to know that she was with child. But now she was gone. She, and the tiny life cradled within her stomach, were no more. Yes, he still had 18, but the fact remained that Samui was gone. He couldn't even feel her presence in the energy that suffused his body. Would the Dragon Balls even be able to bring her back? He didn't know, didn't care. All that mattered was that she was gone. Gone. Gone, 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 gone. What's this? Cell frowned as he cast Gohan's broken body aside, sensing the sudden stirring of power deep within his true adversary. You were still alive after all? Herc! Naruto bent double, his body twisting under the strain of the emerging energies. Cell cackled. That's it! Show me your true power! Little did he know what was truly happening within the blonde. The barrier that had prevented Naruto's transformation had just fallen away. The floodgates were open. With the union of Samui, there was nothing left to curtail the repulsive power that had been constrained by the mad machinations of Dr. Gero. Samui's soul flowed through him like a river, ushering him onwards to a new form. But with this change came something else, something unexpected. Because Naruto was still looking at the moon, and the demented doctor in all his genius had made a monumental mistake. He'd never considered what might happen when two changes collided, when the sanity of their android itself hung on such a tenuous thread, only to snap under the strain. In short, Naruto broke. Kill, crush, destroy. Those three words encompassed his very being. An unholy urge for destruction all but flooding his body as the Blutz waves overwhelmed him. With the last of his strength, he harnessed that anger, gave it a direction in which to clow. Cell, kill Cell, crush Cell, destroy Cell. That was all he could do before his mind vanished completely. Before he gave in to grief. Kill, crush, destroy. His body began to change, his heart hammering as his ribcage began to bulge, bones cracking, bulging, shifting, muscles thickening as the beast within emerged. Kill, Cell, kill. Power flooded his every pore, his eyes flashing crimson, scarlet fur sprouting across his body. His face elongated, a snout pushing its way out as the hapless Z-fighters looked on. None but Vegeta and Piccolo knew the truth of what was happening, and even then they were stunned into silence. Goku frowned. Is that supposed to happen? 18 felt her heart plummet deep into her stomach as she watched her beloved blonde transform in that towering monster. Yet she was as helpless as a newborn. There had to be something she could do, something she could say that would snap him out of this but bring him back to his senses. Naruto. Oh, crap. Krillin gulped. Guys? Is he doing what I think he's doing? Piccolo's eyes bulged, those knife-like fingers biting deep into his green palms as he watched Naruto continue to grow, those fangs sprouting where human teeth belonged, muscles bulking to inhumane proportions, fur quickly overtaking human flesh. Not again. The great ape had been terrifying enough back when Gohan had transformed as a boy. For someone as powerful as Naruto to loose himself to that beast was nothing short of disastrous. He'd destroy the earth! Thinking quickly, he fired a thin beam of ki at the hybrid's tail. What? Only for the blonde's engulfing aura to swat the blast aside into the dirt. Before he could think to destroy the moon, the blonde erupted, his body bulging upwards into the towering Uzaru that had so defined the Saiyan race as a whole. Its black fur burned scarlet, crimson eyes streaming angry tears. Its jaws parted with a quiet clack. For a long moment there was silence. And then, get down! Naruto screamed. What? Cell recoiled before the sight of the crimson Uzaru. It didn't make any sense. What was going on here? He'd expected an increase in power, not a transformation into a giant ape. What madness was this? Even as the bioandroid looked on, the great Goliath towered over him, its massive feet making mush of the ground beneath it, creating seismic quakes as it stomped forward, beating at its chest. The creature was nothing short of a giant, its fangs bared in a defiant roar as it howled at the moon. So he turned into an ape? How disappointing. A massive hand swung down at him with surprising speed, snatching him up off the earth and bringing him face to face with the beast. It screamed at him, slathering him in noise and angry wet spittle. Cell merely took one glance at the raging gorilla his adversary had transformed into, and scowled. A thin like of ki erupted from his eyes, searing into the crimson ape's snout. Nothing. It barely even burned. Flabbergasted, the almighty android began to realize he'd only angered the great ape even further. Oh dear. Naruto growled. Ground. Cell gasped as the great beast tightened its hold on him and slammed him into the face of the earth, the desert tumbling around him as Naruto's hammer blow pummeled through its foundations. Cell felt blood rising in his mouth, his vision blurring as the monster tromped towards him, the earth shaking like so much glass. Such power. If he didn't get serious, what are you doing, idiot? This is seriously not cool. The Uzaru froze abruptly, shocking everyone. Its wide eyes grew larger still, searching for the voice. Hurry up and get a hold of yourself. A low, throaty rasp tore out of the ape's throat. Sa-mui. Giant, fumbling fingers strained toward the moon as the great ape turned, reaching up as though they could grasp it, cradle that sphere in its palms, hold onto it for ever and ever and ever. Suddenly it began to shrink, its saurian features collapsing on itself, flesh sprouting in place of fur. And then it happened. The great ape threw its arms back and gave a final gut-wrenching scream, its body disappearing in a blinding tower of light. Seconds passed. Entire worlds hung on the balance of what would happen next. Why? A rough, angry voice whispered from the pillar of heavenly gold that had eclipsed the final transformation. Why did you do it, Samui? Cell balked as Naruto strode out of the mighty light, his imperfection left behind in that shining radiance. This form was slim, lacking the bulky armor of Android 16. It was sleek, deadly, lethal. Every step produced was empty of sound, so unlike the trademark click-click-click that accompanied his own locomotion. He moved with a transient grace, his movements brief and short, no steps wasted whatsoever in that gliding gait. He was power personified, anger incarnate, right down to the throaty snarl that had become his voice. Naruto was reborn. I never wanted this. Never. There were angry tears in Naruto's eyes, hot moisture streaming upward with the wind summoned by the arrival of his new form. You should have just let me die. Bright orbs the colour of saffron leered out at him, skin kissed by the sun, a healthy tan complexion matching the matte black armour grafted to his body, bearing an eerie resemblance of his own green armour. Yet more somehow, as if he had reached a new pinnacle of power that Cell himself had yet to realise. "Why didn't you let me die?" Those ebony tresses whipped upward within a furious shout, his tail thrashing angrily at the remnants of the ring behind him. The night itself trembled around them, the planet threatening shake itself apart in the face of this apocalyptic fury. Unbidden, Cell felt himself take a step backwards, retreating before this ungoldy monstrosity. This wasn't a Super Saiyan 3. It was something else, something more. An almighty being on a higher plane, his boot driving deep furrows into the ground as he glided back to the fray. There was a silence as that shout echoed on into the distance ahead of him, as though heralding the chaos to come. "Naruto," 18 sobbed silently, hopelessly torn between grief and relief at seeing him alive and unharmed. She felt absolutely wrecked knowing that Samui had sacrificed herself for him, when she herself hadn't been able to do the deed out fear of losing herself, her soul, her very being. But now Naruto was here. And Samui? He did it again. Piccolo choked out, trembling before such ki. He's gone even higher. Trunks could barely nod. Damn him! Vegeta raged, inwardly seething at the sight of such power. First Kakarot and his boy, now this piece of tin. Naruto. Gohan groaned from where he lay, broken and battered. You're alive. The Blackette glanced down at him, his whiskered face nearly inscrutable in the dark. Then the world blurred. The young Super Saiyan suddenly found himself on the ledge with the others, their startled faces staring at him in disbelief. Get him a senzu bean. Naruto rumbled, and then he was gone again, a distant light in the darkness. So, you've finally come out of hiding. Cell could barely contain his glee as he gazed upon the dark-haired Strider standing before him. Perhaps now the game will truly be exciting. No games. Horrid yellow eyes pinioned him, rooting him where he stood. I can never forgive you for what you've done here today. Recovering, the resurrected warrior snorted, his green aura flaring bright once more as he called upon Broly's stolen power. Whether you forgive me or not matters little to me, 21. So long as you... Pain. Clenched knuckles ploughed into the side of his face in a devastating backhand, Star's entire planets detonating before his vision in a kaleidoscope of pure agony, shattering his helmet like so much glass, and throwing out a blast wave that knocked him flat on his back and into the ground. Cell clambered upright again within an instant, but the damage had already been done. Naruto stalked after him, rippling with power, eyes bright and teeming with untold anger. Snarling, the android reciprocated in kind, bringing his hands down to its side, concentrating energy between them. So be it. If you want to end it, then I'll end it. Take this! Me. No! Goku shouted from the sidelines. You can't put that much power into the Kamehameha. It's too dangerous. Naruto paused for a moment, frowning at Cell. Then he continued forward, not hastening his pace in the slightest. Me! Cell grinned, sneering at his foe. Thank you for waiting, fool. Now, die! Ha! He swung his arms up, launching the familiar energy wave. Naruto didn't even wait it until it was close enough to obliterate him. He just kept walking, moving unimpeded in the face of the overwhelming wave. He made no move to defend himself. He simply continued forward in spite of the attack, striding relentlessly onwards as he disappeared into the light. Still, Cell poured more and more of his power into the attack, determined to incinerate the encroaching Saiyan before he could hope to try and reach his position. It was only when his immeasurable reserves threatened to abandon him completely that he released his hold on the techniques, letting those brilliant blue streamers fall away. There, he gasped out, glaring into the cloud of dust and debris obscuring his vision for miles in either direction. How do you... Naruto stood there before him less than a foot away, utterly unfazed, his skin still steaming from where the wave had made contact. He was scowling. "I said I can never forgive you. No mercy!" The next thing Cell knew, the next thing he could comprehend, something struck his abdomen with more force than he could ever hope to conceive. Beneath the single explosive punch, the angry android's defensive aura shattered, his skin tore, his blood boiled and evaporated, and the base of his spine liquefied. He remained still for a few seconds as his aura melted away, twitching spasmodically. Then he pitched forwards with a wet gurgle, vomiting blood and collapsing in a boneless heap. A blow of that caliber would have ended a lesser warrior, not him. "Nack! How can you? What have you done to me?" Instead, he was forced to lay there helpless, struggling to regenerate as the godlike warrior stalked towards him. Not enough time. Even as he frantically fought his body to restore what had been lost, Naruto closed the gap between them, those soundless footsteps a silent harbinger to his end. And then he was suddenly there, towering over him, his body blotting out the moon, a dark spectre, come to reclaim what had been lost. 4 words snaked past those stern lips, making themselves known through his golden aura. "This is for Samui." "Mercy," Cell croaked, realizing what was about to happen, that his end was nigh. "Please, I beg of you, spare me. Naruto said nothing to that one, merely raised his right hand. There was no energy build-up. With frightening speed, a pure red energy bolt emerged, rocketing forwards. Cell didn't even have time to see his end. One moment, he had been laying on the earth, helpless to do anything other than beg. The next, that white-hot impulse of ki detonated against his immobile body, shredding the seemingly indestructible abomination into so many pieces, so many cells, then taking those very cells and obliterating even them, right down to the last molecule. And all Cell knew was the light. Chapter 15. Retribution Power. It flooded his very pore, filled his every cell. God, he hated the sound of that abominable verb to the brim with unholy ki. And yet, Uzumaki Naruto wanted to weep. He was strong now, stronger than he'd ever been in his shinobi days. Perfect, complete, whole. Every breath made the earth quiver. Each step made the crust of the very planet shift. He shifted ever so slightly, his armor rustling with the motion, casting sinister scarlet sparks in every direction. In this body, he had everything he'd ever wanted, and more. He was the strongest being in the universe. Cell was dead at his hands. 18 was safe. Nothing could touch her now. By these means, he should be happy. Ecstatic! And yet, he wasn't. Because Samui was gone. Naruto had blasted Cell into 1,000 pieces and then scattered those ashes to the wind, but she was still gone. The voice he'd heard in his head was nowhere to be found. Try as he might, he couldn't feel his beloved blonde anywhere within him. That frightened him in a way words couldn't describe. Whatever their union had done, it seemed to have obliterated the last of the sentient circuits Dr. Jiro had implanted him with. He was organic once more. Not a Saiyan or a shinobi, but something in between, while still retaining all the benefits of both worlds. A lonely, forlorn breeze caressed his face as he continued to stare down at the monster he'd become. He saw the clouds come dark and angry, summoned by his power and Cell's destruction. When the rain finally began to fall, he welcomed it, his hard eyes staring up unflinchingly into the drops, refusing to blink amidst the falling water. Lightning flashed through the heavens, but instead of emasculating his wrath, it only added fuel into the burning flame that was his aura. He saw her face flash before his eyes, and something snapped. He felt his heart beating fast, hammering against his chest, pounding in his ears like the drums of a great hunt out for his blood. Only hours before he had felt invincible, and yet now the fragility of life was all too evident. Samui was gone. His fault. All his fault. His sorrow and grief swelled up into hate. Hatred. For every step forward he took, one of his loved ones seemed to be hurt. Or worse. This time, Samui was truly gone for good. No regenerative fluke would be bringing her back. And it was all his fault. God fucking damn it! Blinding energy swirled around him like an uncontrollable cyclone, obliterating everything as the Super Saiyan gave himself to his rage and began to scream. His voice smashed against the ground, shattering stone and emancipating earth as though it were so much paper. He roared until his throat was hoarse, until his lungs could no longer sustain the superlative shout ripping out of his mouth. An angry peal of thunder took hold of a portion of earth and shook it apart at his feet, sending shards of stone shooting into the stormy heavens above. And then it was done. Naruto cast a glance down at himself once more, the crimson-orange fur wreathing his body, sheathing his knuckles. He caught sight of his reflection in a shard of a nearby puddle, and what he saw there left his throat dry. The face that glared back at him was hard and angular, its whiskered cheeks the only reminder that this was still his body. Saffron eyes shone fierce and angry spiky ebon tresses framing his visage on either side a heartbeat later. It was a face straight off his darkest nightmares, a silent signification of the creature he had become to kill Cell. Naruto. He turned slightly, taking in the strange armor that adjourned his lower torso and shoulders. Not green like Cell's, not even a suit to cover him in its entirety. Pauldrons and vambraces mostly. He didn't want them. The armor was a reminder of what he'd lost. Even as he thought of this, the armor dissolved, rippling back into his skin. Perhaps not as organic as he'd first thought. Another, though, was all it took to summon it again. But this time, he let his mind wander, grafting it into a form he so desired. Sure enough, the strange black substance obeyed, adding the cloak he'd once worn during his days as Rokudaime, the breastplate and greaves he'd worn as an Anbu before his ascension to his lofty title. He let it linger for but an instant before banishing it, leaving him clad in the battered orange pants of his guy once more. Power. It was all his. But what good was it if he couldn't use it to bring Samui back? For all the strength he'd took from this battle, he may as well be a powerless child where it mattered most. So now I am become death, he murmured brokenly, raising his gaze to stare wearily at the full moon. The destroyer of worlds, and yet powerless against it. Naruto couldn't fight the tears when they came, not this time. It was like trying to swim upstream. He was helpless to fight against the current, swept away. Hot, angry moisture gushed out of those red-rimmed eyes, sadness and sorrow flowing silently as he clenched his jaw against the cries threatening to tear their way out of his throat. Why? Why did she have to give herself up, and her child with her? Why did they have to die? Why wasn't he strong enough? Why? 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 Atop the cliff, the Z-fighters were blissfully unaware of his tears. Indeed, his scream had frightened them, but it seemed as though the worst had finally come to pass. Many of them hadn't known Samui that well, and while they were saddened to see her go so too, were they delighted to realize that the monstrous Cell was also no more. For a time it had seemed dicey, but Naruto's cold execution of the mad machine had swiftly allayed their fears. He did it. Cell's energy has completely vanished. Piccolo exulted. Unbelievable. Trunks muttered. He's gone. I can't sense him at all. No matter how far he strained his senses, he couldn't detect so much as a glimmer of the monster's energy. Cell had been annihilated, right down to the last atom of his being. There was nothing left to regenerate from. But that wasn't what galled him. One of Dr. Jiro's creations, an android, had just saved the world. To think he'd tried to kill him. This boded a great change in the young man, one that would shake him to his very core. Oh man, Goku actually seemed slightly disappointed at the anticlimactic end. I didn't even have a chance to fight. Gohan groaned. Father. Damn it all! Vegeta seethed inwardly, dark eyes shifting from father to son, then back against. He'd sensed it before when his rival had nearly jumped into the fray to save his progeny. The true depths of his adversary's power. The idea that a lower-class warrior like Kakarot continued to surpass him was bad enough, but now that he's seen what Gohan and Naruto were truly capable of, he was more determined than ever before to reclaim his place as the prince amongst his people. Just you wait, Kakarot, and you too, Gohan. I'll surpass you soon enough. And you too, boy. Krillin was having difficulty believing it all. But you mean we're really safe again? Tien offered a weary smile. Yeah, Bud. Yamcha was of a like mind. Oh man, it's been a few years since I heard someone say that. In the silence that ensued, a lone android mourned. Goosebumps gripped her skin as the true fear of being alone hit her. She was the last one left. 18 said nothing, worldlessly aghast that Earth's greatest heroes were unaware of the silent suffering take place only a few miles below their feet. How could they not notice? Even from here, she could feel the pain radiating outward from Naruto, an ocean of misery threatening to engulf her completely and swallow her whole. It was tangible. Was she the only one that felt this? This sorrow? This grief? Wordlessly, she rose into the air and began angling toward the distraught. Well, she could call him blonde, but he certainly didn't look like one now. Regardless, he needed her. So to his side she went. Naruto! Naruto heaved a final sobbing gasp, his sorrow spent, energies extinguished. What was he going to do now? There had to be something, some way he could— Hey! A gentle voice resounded in his ear. Are you all right? Crushed as he was by grief, he almost didn't hear his angel alighting beside him, but he certainly felt her. Everything went rigid when he felt 18 embrace him from behind. No, not her too. He almost jerked away, fearful that she would disappear as well, but when those slim arms did nothing more than then around him, those supple fingers grasping at the fur and skin of his chest, he reluctantly allowed himself to drop back into her arms, turn into her embrace. It was a little awkward. He'd been taller than her to begin with, but in this form he was all but giant compared to her. God, you got tall, she muttered into his chest. Numbly, his mind processed the words. Witty banter. An attempt to distract him. He welcomed it. Welcomed her. 18 cringed ever so slightly as those strong arms tightened around her back and held fast. She could feel it. A raw anger thrummed deep through his body, white-hot and powerful. Not directed at her, but rather at the opponent he'd just vanquished. Nevertheless, she returned his embrace, giving him all the comfort she could, and more. What, you like what I've done with the body? Naruto's voice was deeper than before, with a harsh quality that immediately reminded 18 of 16, that gentle giant that Naruto had fist-fused with. The anxious, boyish tone was gone, replaced with a staid boldness, a calm, composed nature even. And yet, under that composition lurked a world of hurt. You tried your best, she said, switching topics. Naruto knew she was trying to soothe him. It didn't help. My best wasn't good enough. Oh? A blonde brow was arched up at him. I think Samui and Cell might have something to say about that one. Ah, whatever you say, shorty. She must have succeeded because a slight smile tugged at his whiskered face. I am not short. Neither was Samui. They fell into an agonizing silence at that. His gaze traced the barren landscape, the craters he and Cell had carved into the terrain. The Earth would never be the same. And, thanks to Trunks' boneheaded wish to restore his father to life, the Dragon Balls of this planet probably wouldn't be active for another 6 months. 6 months, if she could be revived at all. Another pang tore through him at the thought. Damn it! Wait! Namek. That was it. All his problems were solved. He could do it right away. Not have to wait at all. Everything could be solved at the drop of a hat. That's it, he exclaimed, a grin tearing across his whiskered face. That's it. What are you, Eep? 18 yelped as he grabbed her by the waist and swung her around, pinwheeling her round and around like an out-of-control carousel. By the time he finally put her down, her world was whirling, spinning about with his words, one big, merry blur that she couldn't have understood even if she wanted to. Don't you see? At last, his speech resolved into some form of clarity. Namek! What's a Namek? 18 asked blearily, squinting up amidst the raindrops. Not a who, where? Naruto clarified, delivering a scorching kiss to her lips that left her dazed and reeling all over again. They have Dragon Balls of their own. We can just ask to use theirs. We can even use them to cut the wait time on ours down to nothing. Bah! It's brilliant. Why didn't I think of it before? His fellow android swooned slightly in his grasp. I should be asking why you didn't kiss me like that before. The Super Saiyan laughed and kissed her again. With his instant transmission and newfound powers, he could easily— excuse me. A voice called. You there, Mr. Uzumaki. You are Mr. Uzumaki, are you not? He turned ever so slightly, regarding the one who had dared to interrupt their celebrations. Ah, it was the reporter and the cameraman from before, the very duo he'd saved from certain doom. Apparently they'd sidled up to him at some point. Releasing the transformation was as easy as an even breath for him now that he had full control of his energy, but he chose to remain in this ascended state regardless. With a scarred hand, he beckoned the pair closer, waiting until they were close enough before speaking. I am indeed. He forced a smile to his face, even though he felt like crying. Good to see you made it. Why, thank you. If you hadn't shoved us out of the way. Oh, right. Abruptly, he seemed to remember himself. Can you tell us what happened to Cell? 18 frowned, a rare emotion overlaying her usually platonic visage. Anger. I'll tell you what happened. Cell is dead by my hand. Naruto interrupted. His words were hoarse, an animalistic growl. I killed him. You can tell your champion that when he wakes up. But what happened to your female companion? The reporter Naruto had never deigned to remember his name, asked tentatively. We saw her only a few minutes ago. Was she another victim of Cell? All right, maybe this guy did have a flair for the dramatic. Naruto paused, remembering with an unwelcome pang of grief that his first love was dead. Gone, came the quiet reply, his words nearly lost in the downpour. She died. Died? Pardon me, sir, but I'm afraid I don't understand. No, you don't. A growl resounded in his throat. She sacrificed everything for this planet, and your ignorance demeans her. Listen well, because I'm only going to say this once. Sir? Man will occasionally stumble over the truth, but usually manages to pick himself up, walk over or around it, and carry on. Naruto found himself continuing, saffron eyes boring into the camera, addressing millions upon viewers worldwide in the broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen of the world, this is the truth. Your best has never been, nor will it ever be, good enough against monsters such as these. You place your faith in your champions, armies, and your nations and your governments, and for what? That. Turning, he pointed a lone finger at the charred earth where the ring had once existed. None of this is a trick. The powers we possess can be duplicated through hard work and training. But some call this a trick. They refuse to believe that their eyes tell them. And so they fight. And they die. It's a never-ending cycle. If the Earth doesn't learn from this disaster, then she will suffer the same fate time and time again. Next time, I might not be there to prevent it. So learn from your mistakes and heed this warning. Cherish life. Don't threaten it. Because if you do, if you threaten the innocent, if you attack the weak and the helpless, if you think yourself above the law, we will be there to stop you. His words reverberated through the hearts and minds of millions, those scorching saffron orbs searing into their very soul. The words were not a threat. They were a promise to bring down hell upon any who would dare to do harm to the people of Earth. An oath to— It's a trick! Case in point, 18 muttered, disentangling herself from her beloved's arms as the cameraman snapped around, focusing on this new threat. Beside her, Naruto bristled. Somehow, some way, Hercula had found his way back to the land of the living. It's a trick, I tell you. There's no way this half-pint could have defeated Cell. I tell you, it's all an illusion of some sort. Truly, his stupidity was painful. In his base state, Naruto might have been able to ignore him. But as a Super Saiyan 4, with all restraints removed, there was no such change. Saffron orbs slid aside, regarding him balefully from the corner of his eyes. A vein throbbed in his forehead. Trick? Yeah, that's what it was. All right, bub. A trick! All of it, a trick! The large man blundered on, heedless of the verbal mine upon which he was about to tread. Even that woman, she's probably not even dead. She's got to be hiding around here somewhere. Bah, cram! The interrupting thunder savaged the ground as a storm of blinding lightning and howling wind erupted around Naruto. His eyes had vanished, the pupils now white and deathly. As his energy rushed out, the air around him was suddenly warm and thick. At his feet, the increased intensity of his aura crushed rocks into fragments of nothingness, the golden light trapped within his body trying its hardest to escape as the storm gathered about him. Black clouds blotting out the moon overhead, casting him in radiant glow. His head jerked round southward and back down, his blank eyes fixed on Hercules. You, a muscle jumped in the demigod's jaw as he spoke. You dare? Me? Hercule asked, his jaw hanging open. He was beginning to realize just how inordinately angry the Super Saiyan was. You dare make light of Samui and her sacrifice? At the words, Naruto spun a half-circle, growling in frustration, swinging a clenched claw in the direction of the bulky brawler and exerting the full weight of what was now his, this newfound, unstoppable power. Hercules' voice cut off in a choked squeak as Naruto squeezed telekinetically, hoisting him off the ground by his throat. Nothing was held back in that instant. That single gesture immediately started to crush his trachea, the larger man's face purpling beneath the strain, the lack of life-giving air to his brain. At the words, Naruto spun a half-circle, growling in frustration, swinging a clenched claw in the direction of the bulky brawler and exerting the full weight of what was now his, this newfound, unstoppable power. Naruto rumbled. "Do you not believe? Do you not understand? Are my words lost on you?" Hercule gagged but still clung to his beliefs. After all, they were all he had left. It didn't lose anything. Shouldn't have said that. Something in those words sent Naruto into a rage. All pretense of perfect civility vanished in that instant. "What do you know of loss, little man?" A single backhand sent the world's strongest sprawling like a helpless child, his body skidding and sliding against the stone. "Where were you when we were fighting for you and your precious planet just now? Huh?" Another shattered mister. Satan's jaw like so much glass, reducing all that blubbering to little more than incoherent sobs, because despite the beating he'd sustained, the stranglehold still persisted, still squeezing his life away. "You were hiding, like the coward you were. And when I'd all but give my life for this world. When I've lost one of the most precious people to me, you dare to mock her? The resolve she's shown? You have no right." Hercule was foaming at the mouth now, his hands scrabbling weakly against the vice that was slowly choking the life out of him in the rain. The mighty man had since fallen to his knees, crying out in furious, strangled yelps. Still Naruto squeezed, sneering as he continued his invisible stranglehold, forcing the afro-bearer to his knees. Lightning crackled around them in a furious tempo, the storm howling its fury, displaying his anger for all the world to see and fear. 21! Stop! 18 grabbed at his wrist, shivering as a chill of fright, coupled with the cool, wet rain that soaked her, shot down to her toes. "You're killing him!" "Good," the god rumbled, his eyes narrow and intent. "He deserves death for mocking her sacrifice." "Maybe, but not like this," Naruto snarled. "Exactly like this." 18 froze subconsciously, drawing back beneath that portent glare. Obviously, Naruto wouldn't dare hurt her, but she still felt unsettled, vulnerable, trapped. Those were human feelings, right? Something that was completely irrational and yet felt completely real. She pulled what remained of her shirt closer around her chest, gathering up her courage. "No." When next she spoke, her tone was stronger than any steel, her hand wrenching his arm down and away. "This isn't you." "I know it. What would Samui say? Would she want this?" Those words threatened to tear everything apart for him, his blissful rage shattering beneath the weight of those syllables. She would... No, she would not. Naruto blinked once, twice, 3 times, his mind slowly clawing its way back from that dark and bleak place corner of his mind. "No!" He dropped Hercule like a hot potato, grimacing at how close he had come to falling. No, he wasn't a killer. He didn't slay the innocent. No matter how much Hercule might deserve death for his ignorance, it wasn't his place to mete out judgment on the man. His eyes narrowed. For the briefest of moments, he considered doing it anyway. "Get him out of my sight," he growled. "Or the Earth's about to be down one less idiot. Go on now, get." Hercule needed no further encouragement. Naruto watched him flee into the night, and once more the temptation rose to shoot him in the back. Ahem! 18's gaze held him. "Fine," he sighed, his gaze slipping back to the now trembling reporter and cameraman, the pair having fallen eerily silent in the wake of his power. "I suppose you two want a story, don't you?" He was inordinately filled with glee when they nodded, pleased to realize his earlier outburst against their so-called champion had actually shorted the device out. If that shattered lens and rising smoke was of any indication, they were probably the only ones to witness the self-styled "If you want a story, meet me in West City tomorrow at high noon." He spoke calmly and clearly, enunciating each and every word. "You'll have your story then. The Earth deserves to know the identities of her champion. Not that lumbering lummox who would have taken the credit and deceived the world as a whole. The truth was owed them after all. Until then, gentlemen." 18 barely had time to squeak before her beloved grabbed hold of her and moved. A brief flicker of instant transmission carried them away, bringing the dynamic duo face to face with their new friends once more, the latter taking in those shocked, slightly gleeful expressions at a glance. "Looks like you did it, huh?" Goku asked solemnly. "Yeah." I obliterated him down to the last molecule. He won't be coming back this time. You did it! Gohan was the first to congratulate him, that childlike enthusiasm momentarily supplanting his more aggressive persona. I knew you could. Thanks, kid. Naruto chuckled. You weren't so bad yourself. He dimly recalled the young Saiyan flinging himself into the fight when he'd gone down. If not for him and the precious seconds he'd bought, they might not be standing here at all. Gohan seemed inclined to add to his previous statement. I'm sorry about your friend. Yeah, me too. Suddenly, that sad smile solidified itself into a stern frown. Meet me back on the lookout, he said. I'm going to fix this. Wait, Piccolo interjected. Just how do you plan to do that? Even with your new power, the Dragon Balls. Let me handle that. The shinobi smirked, grabbing hold of 18 once more. Back in a bit. Another flicker and they were gone. One trip to Namek later. The warm orange rays of the rising sun kissed the unbroken horizon, casting a warm glow on the lookout once belonging to Kami. Earth's greatest heroes had not yet rested from their battle with Cell, having instead all but gathered here, their faces turned down to the earth below in silent expectation, allowing the occasional gust and the warm light wash over them. Indeed, the breeze cascading across the lookout was gentle, a stark contrast to the roaring maelstrom that had consumed the earth just hours before. The clouds above were now nothing but small, scattered wisps, tinted golden from the sun. The sky itself seemed to reflect their exhaustion as it brightened from black to blue. A thin cloud of smoke still lingered above them, the lingering clouds the only evidence of Naruto's transformation. And that's the gist of it, the shinobi explained, depositing the newly gathered balls at their feet. The Namex were quite understanding once I explained the situation to them. Nice guys, really. I used the first wish to eliminate the 6-month wait on these bad boys this time, and the second to repair the planet at large. As to the third, and here he and 18 did share a strange conspiratory glance. That's not really important. I was tempted to bring Samui back on Namek, but it just felt right to do it here, you know? Indeed, the speed of a Super Saiyan 4 was not something to be underestimated. It had taken him less than an hour to gather up the balls on Namek and make his first 3 wishes, and only slightly longer to retrieve Bulma's radar and hunt down the ones on Earth. So, Goku began, who wants to do the honors? I never really thought about that, Naruto admitted, glancing at Dende. I guess I could. All right then, it's all yours. All right then, Eternal Dragon, by your name I summon you. Come on out, Shenron. Naruto triumphantly yelled. Immediately the sky began to dim, as if the sun had been turned down. When it had reached a full black, the Dragon Balls themselves glowing even more brilliantly than before, streaks of lightning appearing around them. Naruto had never laid eyes on the Eternal Dragon himself, but he could feel his heart thrumming impatiently to the strange pulse of the balls. Something was about to emerge from them. He could feel it in his bare bones. Something massive. It was a memento the shinobi wanted to be forever engraved on his memory. Suddenly interrupting Naruto's odd reflections, Shenron burst forth from the Dragon Balls. As his dark green body snaked its way through the horizon, the entire form seemed to emit a faint light which made him distinctly visible against the black canopy. The great dragon finally finished positioning himself in the sky and began lowering his enormous head closer to those who had summoned him. Wow, 18 murmured. What in the heck is that? That'd be Shenron, ye who have summoned me, the Eternal Dragon thundered. Speak, and I will grant thee any wish of thy desire. Wait, only one? Krillin frowned at the statement. I thought we had 2? Naruto was swift to elucidate him. Because a certain bonehead decided he wanted to wish his father back early, we only have the one this time. The reborn shinobi snapped angrily. Thankfully, the Demi-Saiyan at least had the wherewithal to appear embarrassed. But if his sheepish smirk were anything to go by, there was more to the story than he'd let on. Actually? I wished for everyone killed by Cell and the androids to be brought back to life, he clarified. It didn't seem fair, just hogging it all to myself. So I used the wish to revive everyone who'd met their end at their hands. There was a silence. Naruto gulped. Wait, everyone? As if to punctuate that very thought, a familiar, guttural shout filled the air. Rival! Naruto bristled instinctively at the sound of that distant voice. Only one individual had ever called him that in his lifetime. Senses screaming in warning, He raised his gaze into the heavens just in time to catch sight of an unmistakable green comet shooting down from on high into Earth's atmosphere. An all-too-familiar energy pressed down on his shoulders, seemingly out of nowhere, growing stronger with each passing moment as its owner neared the lookout. There was no maddened laughter to accompany his return, however. No destruction to herald his return. Still, the shinobi remained stiff, very nearly expecting a fist to slam into his face. When it didn't strike him, he turned, baffled. Broly alighted before him, dark eyes narrow and intent as he powered down from his legendary state. Kakarot! Uh-oh, Goku gulped. Looks like he's ready for round 2. But the Super Saiyan didn't attack. Growling softly, he turned for Naruto. What sorcery is this? He demanded to know, his words filled not with anger but wonder. How am I alive? I'm certain that creature killed me on New Vegeta, yet I woke to find myself restored. Whole! He made no mention of his lengthy interstellar travel, nor the days that had taken him to find and lock onto their energy signatures, before finally making his way to Earth. That he'd arrived now seemed a strange coincidence, Naruto thought. Or was it something more? Answer me. Easy there, big boy, the blonde soothed. I guess Trunks ended up bringing you back as well with his wish on the Dragon Balls. Dragon Balls? Wish? Naruto told him. Surprisingly, the larger Saiyan did not lash out at him when he finished. Instead, he stared, his dark gaze roaming across the assembled warriors with something akin to intrigue. Still, the Z-fighters regarded him warily, hesitant to trust this hulking warrior. In the end, Trunks was the first to reclaim his voice. Don't tell me you're here to fight. Once again, the legendary warrior defied all expectation. He laughed. It was a surprisingly normal sound, devoid of the madness and insanity that had plagued his words before. Finally, his gaze sought out Naruto. Come, rival, let us reason together, he said. As difficult as you might find this to believe, the truth is I really have no desire to kill you at present. Also, his head inclined in a slight nod, flabbergasting the Z-warriors even further than before, I would like to apologize to you all. His tongue seemed to have difficulty wrapping around the word, for attacking you while I was in my legendary state. Well, he's surprisingly more lucid than I remember, 18 scoffed. Yes, lucid, that's the word. Broly grimaced, touching a large hand to his head. Death enlightened me, as did he. As I floated in the void, I realized I am not a true Saiyan warrior if I do not retain my mind in combat against my foes. Your mate has given me something to aspire to. I sensed his new power during my travels. There is no one stronger on this planet than he. That is what he is to me. A goal to surpass present. You may find this hard to believe, but I do not wish to harm him until I know my strength can match his. Wait a minute. Vegeta bristled, irate at having been ignored overlong. Legendary Super Saiyan! Huh! Who the devil is this? Where did he come from? The legendary Saiyan snorted. Be quiet, little prince. You should be grateful I have no interest in you. What did you just call me? Weakling. Broly's deadpan was barely concealed. As I said before, I have no interest in someone so lacking. Oh yeah? Is this what you want? Vegeta taunted, pointing to himself. I don't think so. You're scared, aren't you? Go ahead and run away. There was a silence as the two purebloods, Pauper and Prince, stared one another down. May I? Broly grunted at Naruto. Sure, his rival waved him on. By all means, just don't break anything. A sustained grunt sent the Saiyan's hair standing on end, flashing into saffron, then staining into greenish gold. Muscles bulged. Kai flowed, sending his energies skyrocketing. Jaden irises vanishing entirely as the proud prince looked on in hopeless horror. No, not him too. A savage grin twisted at the corner of his mouth, threatening to overtake his Voyage entirely. Only a supreme effort held the madness at bay, prevented it from subsuming him entirely. You were saying something, little man? Vegeta looked as though he'd just seen a ghost. No, you. Exhaling softly, Broly released his hold on the transformation, his massive body shrinking down to its base state once more. I wish to stay on this planet, he continued, black orbs gravitating towards Naruto once more. Is this acceptable? Completely. Naruto chuckled quietly. It was time, it seemed. He risked a glance at 18. Ready? She nodded. Dragon! He barked out, commanding everyone's attention. I wish for Samui and her child to be separated from me, restored to life, and brought to this location." He worded the wish carefully, pushing all that into one sentence but even he didn't know if the great lizard would be able to grant such was a terrifying silence as those red orbs leered down at him. Was this within the dragon's power? Would it refuse him? He didn't think he'd at last. The great beast spoke. "That is not an easy wish," it grunted. "But it shall be granted." Pain. Irk. Naruto felt a strange tugging sensation deep within him, as though his cells were being tugged apart, fused together, only to be torn apart once against. Something emerged, and yet something remained. He felt faint, dizzy, but when his power dropped only slightly, he nearly panicked. His Super Saiyan 4 form remained, but weaker, no longer godlike in its power. Strange. He felt imperfect, but the grasp of his power and the new form he gained still remained. He could feel 18 supporting him, holding him up as he dropped back to his base state. But that thought fell away when a faint sheen of motion caught his eye. Naruto? There she was. Her bright blue eyes lit up as he stepped towards her, a gorgeous white grin streaking across her mouth as she stood and ran to him like a child welcoming her father home from a long business trip. He could only stand dumbfounded as her lithe form slid gracefully across the lookout to him in a single movement. Had she always been so beautiful? Why had he never noticed before that his cherished companion was this sexy, cream-skinned woman? Had the past few minutes changed her? Sure, her hair had grown out a little, but she otherwise looked the same as she always had. She wrapped her arms around his neck with a delighted sob. Still in his state of shock, it took Naruto a moment to react and place his own arms around the thin waist of his fellow shinobi. He buried his face in her neck, enjoying the warmth of her skin on his cheeks and the smell of her hair in his nostrils. He felt her arms tighten around him and her breathing quickened, her breasts heaving up and down against his chest. No time for thought. No time for anything. Suddenly she's in his arms, crying, kissing him, saying his name over and over and over, and then there were tears staining his face, and he's happy, oh so goddamned happy, because she's back and she's here and he's never going to let her go. Never again. Naruto. The baby? Naruto asked of Samui between kisses, flushing. Here, she whispered, touching a hand to her stomach. Then she saw Broly. Wait, what's he doing here? Broly inclined his head. My apologies. Ahem! 18 coughed. As entertaining as this is, need I remind you we have children present? You probably just scarred Gohan for life. Humans, Piccolo muttered, shaking his head. Both Naruto and Samui jerked back as if they'd been burned. Dad? Son Gohan blinked. Why were they making kissy faces like that? And why was he suddenly thinking of Lime, he wondered. Well, you see, son, when a man loves a woman very much, they... Stop right there, Goku. Piccolo barked. He's too young to hear that. Ah, well, Samui purred. I'm glad you wished me back. That was cool of you. Love you too. Naruto snorted. It's perfect. 18 agreed, taking up residence on his other arm. Naruto laughed. It was a deep, pleasant sound. That's right, he decided. There's no such thing as perfection. Cell never realized that. When you become perfect, there's nothing left to achieve. If that's the case, then I'd rather stay as I am, flaws and all, holding on to what matters the most. Yes, that's it. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I am... Grinning, he tightened his arms around his two loves, past and present. Imperfection. AN. And there you have it. The Cell saga is finally over. I apologize for any of you who expected it to be a long, drawn-out thing, but let's face it. Broly's one of the good guys now, too. Everyone wanted him to have that second chance, so he got it. And Samui is back with her baby. Yay! But is the story over? No, far from it. Now we move on to a far more menacing threat, an ancient entity feared by the universe, and an older, nameless terror that Naruto knows all too well. Next time on Perfection, Naruto and Kup get the credit they deserve and all the unwanted fame that goes with it. None for Hercule. On another note, I have no intention of making Gohan a side character / weakling in this story, not while Naruto's around. That boy is going to train and he is going to like it. Additionally, Naruto has attained a form SSJ4, but that is the only part of GT I am willing to incorporate. And yes, I do plan on incorporating Battle of the Gods into this story. Also, Hercule won't be the glory-hogging hound that we all know and hate in this story either, except Naruto and company, to get full credit for their deeds, and all the annoying publicity that goes with it. Has Kurama finally returned? Will the other androids be revealed? Will Boo even be a threat? Find out next time on Imperfection. Also, will someone please give me some ideas for the names of Naruto's kids? I know they're going to be girls, but beyond that, I've got nothing. I need names, people. Names! So in the immortal words of Atlas, review, would you kindly? And of course, enjoy the preview. Preview. Naruto watched his progeny with pride. What's got you so fired up? He wondered aloud. Trunks and Bulla called last night. Said they're going to be in the tournament. Now. I want to. Each word was ground through clenched teeth as she struggled to move, her small body tottering under the heavy weight of the gravity chamber, her long ebony locks plastered to the side of her young face by sweat. Gotta show 'em. Who's boss? She was on 9.5. The 2 years she'd spent in the hyperbolic time chamber having served her well in regard to her younger sister. She'd only begun to struggle under 500x normal gravity, a setting that strained him even in his base state. That pleased him to no small length. Of course, he only ever trained with his girls one-on-one. The last time they'd trained together, those little tykes had very nearly knocked his block off, and he thought Otherworld had some strong fighters, although he had picked up some interesting techniques the last time he'd visited. Daddy! She whined, reminding him that for all her prowess, a Saiyan child was still a child. Are you even listening to me? Maybe. He couldn't quite keep the smile from his face as he watched the little waif from the corner of his eye, her words tugging him back to the present. And what are you going to do about it? Tell me, how do you plan to hit me, let alone spar, when you can barely move? Your sister did better than this, you know. Oh, yeah? She straightened, panting, eyes flashing at the mention of her twin and her more unique abilities. Then I'll just have to go super. What? Naruto spun on a dime as his daughter began to chance. She screamed and the room screamed with her, jagged streams of light erupting up from the floor, shaking the gravity chamber to its core. The tremor was faint compared to what he could truly do, but it was there as she erupted in a flare of gold, her dark locks standing erect and on end. Seafoam green eyes regarded him cheerily, a bright grin overtaking her whiskered visage as she stared him down. She was smiling, he realized, completely in control, and he knew that smile. It was nothing good. Here I come, Dad, the blonde blanched. Hey now, there's no need to get so excited. Gah! Naruto twitched slightly as a sparking fist displaced the air where he'd been mere moments before. He blocked them all with some effort, his hands a furious blur of motion, then one tore through. His head snapped to the side, shock overtaking his features when those clenched knuckles ground into his visage. Of course, he muttered to himself, spitting aside away. It's a Super Saiyan bargain bin sale. Chapter 16. Gravitas. Hiya! King Kai's planet trembled as twin Super Saiyan 3s slammed into one another, their mid-air collision sending silent shockwaves rippling beneath their feet to shock the tiny planetoid lying below. Neither paid it any attention, both combatants far too fixated on their fight to either notice nor care. Molten gold ki strove against deep, verdant green as the pair duked it out, striking with strength capable of obliterating a small moon in a single blow. Strength that would make most mortals quiver, manifested here in the form of these titans, large and small. Oh dear, the king himself blanched, cringing as they swung hard for one another once again. I do hope they're careful with all that power. Fists were being thrown in flurries, kicks were chained together with devastating impact. It was hard to imagine how the pair's stamina could endure so long, but neither showed any signs of slowing. They were ferocity incarnate, and they would not stop until they'd had their fill of this fight. Slugging one another hard in the jaw with all their not inconsiderable ki, they disengaged, retreating to opposite ends of the sky. They hung there for a moment longer, sizing the other up, waiting for any sign of weakness, the easy opportunity afforded by the exhaustion. Rasen Shuriken! One of them cried out, summoning a spiraling of white energy into the palm of their hand. Then he flung it. Eraser cannon! His opponent snarled back. The swelling spheres of chakra and ki slammed into one another and detonated, the explosive wave threatening to fling the Kai's planet into the clouds below. Scarce had the explosion thinned than they were at it once again, by flinging fists and feet and forehead in a relentless barrage that left the heavens deafened and Snakeway shaking to its very foundations. Even those fighters damned to hell sensed this conflict, their titanic tussle shaking all of, "Not bad, Broly," Naruto called out, a wide grin tearing across his face. "It feels like you've become a lot stronger since we last fought." The larger Saiyan folded both arms across his broad chest, a small smile etching into his visage. "I'd feel better about it if you weren't holding back." The killing rage was still there, lingering in the back of his mind, but it was greatly reduced now that he had a target. He found himself perfectly matched with his fellow Saiyan thanks to his recent boost, a worthy foe constantly pushing him to his limits and beyond. Something to temper his unmitigated rage outside of combat would have been preferred, but he'd take what he could get. "Oh," Naruto groaned, crossing both arms comically behind his head. "But it's no fun if I use Super Saiyan 4. Undoubtedly, the legendary Super Saiyan had received a significant Zenkai from his revival, a boost that almost made up for his relative lack of experience in the ancient art of combat. The younger Saiyan was a brawler through and through, however, something that simply couldn't be overcome in the span of a few days. Given time and a few years, perhaps. But as it stood now, he was little more than a brute struggling to overcome all of an eternity under his father's cruel hand. Regardless, he was still one of the few beings in this universe that could give Naruto a workout in his restrained state. Oh, and what a workout it was! Their ever-rising energies forcing him to a slow slog through the murk, Naruto reached his target just as Broly broke free of his impromptu prison and began charging a ki blast. With a roar and a crash, the two behemoths met, bodies whirling. They held each other in a brutish duel, with swears, punches, kicks, and flying blasts. Strikes met counters, and counters met parries, each and every blow delivered with inhuman, crushing strength. The howling roar of their own Enna was overlaid with grunts of pain and rage, the piercing crashes of fist on fist, and the rumbling whir of the incompatible energies the two Saiyans wielded against each other, all coming together in a cacophony of destruction and fury. "Hey, be careful, you two," King Kai's nasal voice resounded from below. "If you keep this up, my planet will be destroyed." Naruto chuckled, scratching at the back of his head. "Sorry about that. But you know this is the only place we can fight without endangering the Earth." "Maybe, but that doesn't make it safe for me." The self-proclaimed king of comedy cracked back. "Sorry." With another laugh, the duo went at it again. Truly, there was nothing like an early morning spa to get one's blood pumping, feel the adrenaline flowing through your veins. Even as a former shinobi, Naruto had to admit that the thrill of battle was something he enjoyed. Perhaps it was the new body he'd acquired at the hands of Dr. Jiro. Perhaps it was the knowledge that he had everything to live for now. Samui and 18 were safe and unharmed, their pregnancies coming along quite nicely, if a little faster than expected. Perhaps it simply had everything to do with his newfound control. While still imperfect, he was now the master of his energies, not the other way around. Whatever the case, he was overjoyed. It was morning here in Otherworld, not even a full day after the Cell Games. A day coming hot on the heels of a night of intense celebration, the whole world round. The entire planet had celebrated wholescale to know that they'd survived the monstrous Cell and his horrific ambitions. It certainly helped that they knew the true identity of the man who'd saved them, not some cheap phony who would have otherwise claimed the credit for himself. And so the celebration to the savior of their planet had continued long into the night. But No had partied harder than the Z-fighters themselves, each celebrating their triumph against a foe they'd feared invincible. Even Broly had been included in the festivities. When he'd asked for a spa the next morn, Naruto hadn't thought anything of it. In fact, he was eager to test out his newfound control against the legendary's seemingly endless vulnerability. So they'd taken their spa to Otherworld King Kai's planet to be exact, on the off chance that their godlike powers laid waste to more than just each other. Broly seemed to be enjoying it thus far, reveling in fighting someone who could truly match and exceed him. As for Naruto, he'd never felt more alive. His every blow was the picture of precision. Ki flowed hot and fast through his veins, empowering him to new heights. The once deadly drain that had accompanied the use of this form had been halved, and while Super Saiyan 4 was a far more efficient transformation, he preferred to handicap himself and give his rival a fighting chance. After all, there was no sport in overwhelming your enemy from the start now, was there? Maybe that was his Saiyan side talking, enjoying the thrill of battle. Maybe he just enjoyed a good scrap. Who knew? We're not getting anywhere with this. Our powers are exactly even, Broly grumbled sullenly, white eyes narrowing as he rubbed at his bruised cheek with an overlarge hand. Stop holding back and fight me with your full strength, rival. Now! I expect nothing less from you. Wait, you mean Super Saiyan 4? Seriously? Naruto scoffed. No, hell no. I have no inhibitions in that form. I'll kick your ass. So you claim. The legendary glowered in spoken challenge. Perhaps you're just afraid to transform. Naruto felt a muscle jump in his jaw. Oh, that did it. All right, but remember. A stray scarlet spark echoed through his already astral aura. You asked for this. Wait a second. King Kai squawked. Don't transform here. You nearly destroyed my planet the last time you... Too late. Jade flashed into Saffron. A muscle jumped in his jaw, veins pulsing in his forehead. Ha! He reached deep within himself, struggling to take hold of the power he'd recently attained. Less than a day old, it struggled in his grasp and resisted, trying to fumble out of his fingers even as he took hold of it. But he'd grasped it too firmly this time. He could already see his hair turning ebony at the edges, feel his muscles bulging as they became engorged with the Kai of his ultimate form. Each second felt like agony as he brought it to the surface, the transcendent power that truly surpassed all others. Go! Deeper he reached, plucking the emotional strings that had first triggered the initial transformation from Uzuru to this truly ascendant Saiyan form. Loss, pain, anger, white-hot fury at losing Samui to his own design, feeling her slip through his fingertips, hearing Cell's laughter in his ears. Like flicking a switch, the power came surging forth. The dam was broken, the words spoken. No longer did his Kai resist him. It finally responded to the pitched emotion roiling through his body. Fur sprouted on his shoulders and chest, his tail turning a stark scarlet before everyone's gaze. His voice dropped an octave, a roar becoming rough and jagged as it trailed through the afterlife. Rah! With a final booming shout, incandescent gold poured from his every pore, sundering the heavens themselves, tearing through the fluffy orange clouds that so defined the upper heavens of Otherworld. Still Naruto kept it up, his scream trailing off into a low growl as his Kai compressed around him, superseding his aura at long last. Broly frowned as the light faded. There was something different about this transformation now that he truly had a chance to study it. There were none of the jagged sparks to be seen in his Super Saiyan 3 state. In contrast, his aura was almost calm by comparison. But those eyes, there was something in them, a hot and primal fury that bespoke only one intention. Battle. His adversary smirked. Game on. That was all Broly heard before Naruto's first sheathed itself inside his stomach, buried to the elbow. He immediately found himself bent double, brought low by that single blow. The superior Saiyan said nothing to that effect, because the air was suddenly boiling with intense blows, powerful punches and cruel kicks, battering at his defenses before he even had time to straighten. The assault was a roar as it was rapid. No reprieve held him back, no quarter offered, and none given as he hammered home his power-swollen fists. "What's the matter?" he laughed. "I thought you could handle this." Wham! Broly's chin snapped aside as a haymaker crossed his cheek. Throck! He choked on his own bile as a double-fisted blow smashed into his back and threatened to snap his spine. Crunch! A devastating kick slammed into his nose, crushing capillaries. Finally, Naruto lowered his limb and waited for him to recover. Saffron eyes leering down at him intently, sneering in their confidence. Was it arrogance or cockiness that stayed his hand? Whatever the case, Broly was determined to tag his rival at least once before throwing in the towel. To do anything less was undeserving of his Saiyan blood. Gotcha! His fist phased through an afterimage, leaving him to pound a chunk out of Snake Way, effectively obliterating the serpentine tail into tiny shards. The legendary's eyes rose from where they had been locked onto his impact point, met Naruto reflected through the falling debris. And then Broly's grin widened, his teeth showing white, before he launched himself at and after the still-recovering Saiyan, eraser cannon in hand. Huh! Naruto snorted and flashed away without a second thought, giving no heed to the freshly mowed green landscape at his back. Broly shot right past him, energy sphere already flying from his hand. In hindsight, he really hadn't been aiming at the planet. He'd simply assumed his rival would slap aside the blast at the last instance, and their battle would continue. Instead, the Super Saiyan simply bolted in a tight burst of instant transmission, far too focused on the fight to truly consider the ramifications of his actions until it was already too late. Unable to stop the blast's momentum in time, both Saiyans were forced to watch as the eraser cannon ploughed right into the unprotected planetoid. The results were disastrous, in every sense of the word. Pop! The planet erupted. Naruto and Broly had just enough time to raise their auras and shield themselves before the planet exploded. The resulting supernova was surprisingly small in size and scale. Broly's massive blast simply touched the soil and obliterated it on the spot, core and all. King Kai was left hovering helplessly with both Bubbles and Gregory, jaw agape, pudgy face twitching as he struggled to comprehend the sudden and abrupt loss of both his home and his life, though he seemed a great deal more incensed toward the latter. My planet! He screamed. Then he realized he had a halo, and his face purpled. You brutish bonehead! You actually killed me! Oops, Broly grunted. At least he had the wherewithal to appear sheepish this time around. Relax, King Kai, Naruto said. We'll wish you and your planet back with the Dragon Balls. You'd better. Naruto groaned at the cloud of debris that had once belonged to the Kai, transformation dropping away as he realized their battle was well and truly over. Broly, my man, he sighed. We need to find you an outlet for all this aggression. Suddenly a light flicked on above his head. An old impish smile tugged at his lips, and had Broly truly known his rival, he would have realized that this grin did not bode well for him. What you need is a date. Hate? No! No, 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 no! Naruto shot back, wagging his finger in reproach. Nothing like that. A girl. A lady friend. And I know just the girl. Indeed, he did. She was probably the only woman on the planet who could hope to tame the savagery the Saiyan housed within. It certainly helped that she could snap just as hard at the slightest sneeze. Perhaps her gentle side would be able to soothe the savage beast. Whatever the case, he knew it would. Taking hold of the larger man's arm, he snapped off a sloppy salute to the now-deceased Kai. Jane! Hey, wait a minute! King Kai shouted. Come back! Too little, too late. Naruto and Broly were already gone, vanishing to the land of the living with a flicker of instant transmission. It was only then that the North Kai remembered what he'd wanted to say, realizing the terror that had been set loose upon the world. One that would undoubtedly come for the planet Earth now that he'd been released. Bojack. Those two can probably handle him. Right? Came house. Mwah! Master Roshi jumped violently as two figures inexplicably appeared on his front lawn, the twin thud of their booted feet nearly startling him out of his hammock. Oolong! We're under attack! He balked for a moment, readying himself for a fight and fearing the worst as their shadowy figures resolved themselves into a pair of familiar faces. Naruto bit back the urge to laugh at his trepidation. Not so long ago, the idea of being seen as an enemy would rankled him greatly. Now he just found the old man's resolve amusing. Yo! Nice to finally meet you, Roshi-san. The old master frowned. Have we met? In a way, yes, the former shinobi replied. You might have seen me on the TV. Fighting Cell. Didn't Goku mention me? Another moment of awkward silence passed before those sunglasses lifted ever so slightly on his face. Oh, you're Naruto, aren't you? The blonde offered an exaggerate bow in return, the slightest smile pulling at his whiskered visage. All right, and this is my friend. Naruto nudged Broly aside. I know you're that Saiyan Goku was talking about yesterday. What was your name again? Broccoli? Broly. Surprisingly, the man's mouth twitched in the beginnings of a smile. Pleased to meet you, Master. Is Launch here? Naruto asked. You know, the nice, sane one. As a matter of fact, she is. Thank Kami. I've got someone I'd like her to meet. Ahoo! There was a silence as the sound of a sneeze echoed across the island. Oolong flew out of the house, squealing. And then, Roshi gulped. Oh dear. All hell broke loose. Son of a bitch! Naruto and Broly reflexively flashed into Super Saiyans as a furious scream ripped through the porch, accompanied by the piercing percussions of angry gunfire. Thankfully, the deadly bullets missed Roshi by a mile as he ducked for cover, the rest pinging harmlessly off the Saiyans' transformed bodies. Invulnerable though Naruto might be, he, like any other sane man, knew to fear the wrath of a woman, especially when said woman could change at the drop of a hat, or, in this case, a simple sneeze. Broly had simply transformed out of sheer shock, his lack of control evident in the way his jaw, "Broly, you're up." Naruto shoved him from behind, making use of his superior strength when the younger Saiyan tried to struggle. "Go get him, Tiger, and whatever you do, do not make eye contact." "But do not make eye contact!" The legendary Super Saiyan found himself inexplicably thrust forward and into Kame House. The door swiftly slammed at his back. The sound of gunfire roared out once more mere moments after his entry, only to die away abruptly. Broly's low growl reverberated through the house, echoed by the screech of metal being bent. A woman, clearly Launch, yelped in surprise, the sound sharp and poignant. There was yet another silence after that, this one far longer than the others. Then they heard it, a pleased feminine purr. Now the sounds of exertion could be heard, leaving little else to the imagination. Bingo. Naruto smirked. He made eye contact. Leave it to Broly to do the opposite of what he'd been told. Ah, he loved reverse psychology. Now wait just a darned minute. Roshi huffed. Don't tell me they're... Yep. Oolong coloured in consternation as he clambered over to them. But that's exactly. Now both man and pig were visibly flustered by the blonde's trollish behaviour. Then you... Shh. The blonde pushed one finger to his lips, still smiling all the while. They're coming out. Seconds passed, dragging on into minutes. And still Naruto and co waited. When the door finally swung open, it was well worth the wait, Naruto thought. Whatever Broly had said or done in there, it had obviously worked wonders. The larger Saiyan had returned his base state, and he looked more relaxed than he'd ever seen him. Those dark eyes no longer shimmered with barely repressed power and rage, his jaw no longer clenched with the insanity that fought to find its freedoms. Launch's face was hot and flushed as well as she clung to his arm. Despite being in her berserk state, those eyes were virtually alight with ardour. Indeed, one could see those hearts hanging over her head. It seemed that first date wouldn't be entirely necessary after all. Naruto laughed. Better? Very. Broly tugged the blonde closer to him, his arm curling around her waist. You, she gasped out, insufferable bastard. My work here is done. Naruto nodded sagely. Hey, guys! Oolong's voice rang out suddenly, drawing his attention back to the porch and the radio still perched precariously upon it. Look who's on the radio. Listen! The group scrambled toward it. This is Jimmy Firecracker here at ZTV, came the voice of a familiar reporter issuing forth from the nearly ancient device. We are mere minutes away from an exclusive interview with the elusive Uzumaki Naruto, savior of the world, destroyer of Cell, liberator of... He continued to spout silly titles for several seconds worth of anecdotes before continuing. And still, there seems to be no sign of this honourable warrior. Where could he be? Oolong frowned. Bro, isn't that you? The Super Saiyan swore and rammed 2 fingers against his head. Oh, crap! Baskets! Naruto flickered from Calm House into West City without a thought, careful to suppress his power down to its most manageable levels. If he let his aura flare, he was more than likely to destroy the entire city itself. His Kai responded amicably, calming even as he considered the destruction he might cause. A far cry to the once unstable, life-threatening power of Super Saiyan 3. Now where was that damnable ZTV building? He did have a relative idea of the building's location, but where? It was impossible to miss the giant red letters on that skyscraper. The countless persons milling about it. There was a veritable mob gathered before the building and its giant screen. A single bound sent him sailing over it, a subtle Kia pushed the masses back and allowed him access to the doors. Murmurs rippled through the observers. Say, isn't that... Not knowing what else to do, he strode right into the building, as his predecessor had once done before him. He received more than his share of odd looks as he entered the lobby, but those looks melted away once they saw him. Truly saw him. It certainly spoke well of him that his image was on television at that very instant. footage of the transcendent being that he'd become obliterating the helpless's cell with a well-timed blast of ki and reducing his body to nothingness. A small cough was all it took to draw their attention. His subsequent ascension into Super Saiyan floor all but destroyed the lobby, leaving them gawping at the god who had chosen to grace them with his presence. "Hello," he smiled benignly at their gobsmacked faces, words rough and deep. "Is this CTV? I'm here for my interview." Needless to say, the room erupted into chaos. One hellishly long interview later. "All right then," 18 began slowly, pinching the brow of her nose in a vain effort to calm herself, and failing utterly. "So you caused a stir in the newsroom. I can understand that much. But how did you go from conducting a harmless interview to bringing home an alien girl?" Those words were directed more at the beautiful creature clutched bridal style in his grasp than him. Zangya, as he'd called her, appeared to have taken a bit of a beating. Her pale blue skin was scuffed and scrathed, her outfit in absolute tatters. Somehow she was still breathing. But she wouldn't be for long. Not if an emotionally unstable pregnant 18 had anything to say about it. Needless to say, she'd taken offense when he'd shown up on their doorstep with the unconscious alien in tow. Thankfully, Samui seemed to be reserving her own judgment for the moment, those keen and glacial eyes regarding Zangya's prone form piercingly as on hand cradled her own swollen stomach. "Hey, at least she wasn't shouting." "You had one job," 18 grumbled, sinking into the couch with a groan. "And you destroyed half a city." "Well," he began, "it's not like I was expecting a bloodthirsty alien and his gang to show up and start blasting things. They were so weak it wasn't exactly a fair fight, anyway. By the time Goku and the others arrived, Naruto! To be fair, that wasn't my fault." Naruto finally sighed, defending both himself and the soot-soaked body in his arms. It was this Bojack character. Real nutjob. As soon as I sensed him, I moved to intercept, but Vegeta was already there by the time I arrived. At her thunderous expression, he quickly amended that statement. "Again, not my fault." He seemed to have the big lug under control at the time, so I took his cronies down one by one until the bugger transformed and started pressing him beyond his limits. When I finally offered to step in, he just, I don't know, snapped. All he got was a pair of blank looks. "Look, you can't sense ki, so I'll explain." Zangya was afraid. No, she thought, base fear didn't even begin to cover this. She was filled to the brim with terror, rooted where she stood. Bujin, Bido and Kogu lay dead, round her, eviscerated and torn to shreds. They'd thought that this planet would be easy pickings as they sped through the cosmos. Their destination was Earth from the moment they'd been freed, a planet where so many incredible powers had gathered. Ah, but that had just been the tip of the iceberg. They thought they could handle them. They were wrong. Indeed, imagine their surprise then, when just as their reign of destruction had reached its peak, they had found themselves face to face with two titans more than capable of matching them, blow for blow. Veritable gods given human form. The short one had been the first to greet them, a proud and arrogant little man who was looking for someone to fight. The second was by definition humble and infinitely stronger. He too had been transformed like the other, but where one's hair stood golden and erect, his was black as night, ebon tresses jagged and skied, with scarlet fur sprouting across his bare chest, lending him an almost bestial appearance. Wordlessly, he'd waved them forward, his golden eyes cold and mocking in the afternoon light. But there was something about this form that had given her pause, caused her to hold back when the boys flew forward to challenge him. Even now she wasn't sure what it was. But she had, choosing instead to wait as the rest of Bojack's gang struck. Then he'd beaten them into the ground. One flick of his wrist and Bujin died, his body bifurcated. A single kick decapitated Bido, and a tap of his tail was more enough to pierce the chest of the transformed Kogu and send him crashing to the ground, sword and all. Then he'd turned on her. "I wouldn't do anything were I you," he warned, the words like gravel in her ears. "The only way that ends is with your death." He turned aside, frowning at the unfalsing massacre. "Oi, Vegeta, if you can't finish him, then I will." "Shut up," came the growling reply. "Suit yourself." Shrugging, the almighty Saiyan returned his attention to her. Zangya blanched. This power, it was overwhelming. Horrible. Incredible. Just looking at him nearly had her on her knees. The one besetting Bojack was being beaten back even now that their leader had finally transformed. but the man standing over her could have beaten him with his little finger. It was too much, and so she'd broken down. Tears flowed from her eyes as she prostrated herself before him, begging for mercy she knew she was unworthy of and yet hoping, pleading that he wouldn't bring that hand down and end her life. "Please don't kill me!" There was an awful pall as he stared down at her, golden eyes narrowing. And then the inexplicable happened. The blonde deity smirked. "I like your hair." Vegeta basically lost his shit and became an ascended Saiyan, that is, a Super Saiyan too. Naruto finished with a lack of eloquence. Then he tore Bojack's spine out of his stomach and beat him to death with it. Not a pretty picture, am I right? But when he tried to finish this one off, at their pale faces he sighed and jostled Zangya. It just didn't seem right. You should have seen her face, girls. She was scared, terrified out of her mind. When it came time to cut her down, I just couldn't do it. She might not be an innocent, but she certainly wasn't as evil as her boss. And besides, she's weaker than you, so it's not like you have in the wake of their silence, he continued. It proved a fair point, actually. Now the world knows there are threats out there that they can't defend themselves from. And I even managed to finish the damned Inverview. Did you know they're going to name a city after me? A city! Isn't that great? And you saw fit to bring the girl back because of that. Samui finally made herself known, eyes narrowing on Zangya's body. The young woman had yet to be given a sensu since they'd reached Capsule Corp, but in lieu of the magical beans, she was still beginning to stir. Well, something like that, Naruto chuckled sheepishly. He would have scratched the back of his head, were his hands free. Tempted as he was to put her down, he couldn't. Chances were the only reason Samui and 18 hadn't blasted Zangya was because he was still holding her. He really hadn't had any other choice in the matter beyond convincing them. So, what's it going to be? He asked. Are you going to let her stay, or do I have to leave her on the lookout? Fine. Samui was ultimately the one to relent at last, causing 18 and Naruto to visibly blink. I know better than to hold you down and make you do something you don't want. Just no more, all right? She cast a pleading glance his way. I know you. You're not the sort to leave a girl hanging. But if you get any more, I'll consider not blasting her if she learns her place. 18 finished. Naruto knew that was the closest thing to a yes he'd ever receive. Tentatively, he laid Zange down on the nearest bed and went to get a senzu. You do that! Samui seconded 18, a surprisingly raucous laugh tearing out of her throat. I'm serious, she called. No more hot alien chicks. Naruto grinned. What are the chances? Years flowed together like wind, time passing in the blink of an eye. 6 months later, 18 and Samui went into labor on the same day, much to Naruto's distress. 2 broken hands later, and 18 gave birth to a surprisingly dark-haired, bouncing baby girl, one who would later be named Hinata in honor of Naruto's childhood friend. Samui birthed twins, a pair of girls, named at her own behest, Atsui and Akatane. He had thought he'd known love before. Naruto had. But the moment when he held his children in his arms, there could be no words for the emotion he felt. The days that followed their birth were even more tumultuous. Between leaving Capsule Corp behind and buying a place of their own, there wasn't much time to keep up his training, or hold tabs on the other Z-fighters, as it were. Gohan, he knew, had taken a vested interest in some girl named Lime, it seemed. Goku and Vegeta were intent on competing nearly every day, thanks to their newfound strength. And Piccolo took up his duty as Denda's guardian, most seriously. Future Trunks would later return to his own timeline, vowing to see what other creations Jiro had stored away in secret, but not before exchanging a heartfelt goodbye with the very man who'd changed his life. It was enough to make Naruto wonder, was there another version of himself in Trunks' timeline just waiting to be released? Another Samui just waiting to be released? And if so, would it change that version of him? Would that sorry soul ever know the happiness he knew now, he wondered. Unlikely. For some inexplicable reason, 18 finally broke down shortly thereafter Trunks' departure and invited 17 to their new home, allowing him to see his nieces for the first time since, well, ever. It had been a happy day for Naruto to see his old friend for the first time in months, but even that paled in comparison to the moment of truth. The moment 17 laid eyes on the babies, it was as though he were a changed man. Her brother had sworn up and down that no harm would come to any of his nieces so long as he lived, and despite the strange past they had, Naruto was inclined to believe him. He would have been quite happy had it stayed at that. But life, as it were, was complicated. He and Zangia got involved. 1 year later, his youngest and blue-skinned daughter Zell was born, leaving Naruto with a grand total of 4 girls. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. 4. For all his protests, he really didn't mind having a gaggle of girls. Grounding them was going to be hell, though. And when they were teenagers, he didn't even want to think of that. Having 17 as a brother-in-law was strange enough, but between the two of them, his children would most likely find it impossible to date. He had very exacting standards, after all. Yet for now, such days were far away in the future. Nothing he had to worry about at present. Yes, today he could watch them grow and flourish and feeling nothing but elation, such as now. For now, Naruto watched his progeny with pride. What's got you so fired up? He wondered aloud, pausing in his single-digit push-ups to glance at the struggling girl. She was practically bouncing with energy. Well, as much as one could hope to bounce in such high-gravity environment. Trunks and Bulla called last night. Said they're going to be in the tournament. Now, I want to. Each word was ground through clenched teeth as she struggled to move, her small body tottering under the heavy weight of the gravity chamber, her long ebony locks plastered to the side of her young face by sweat. Gotta show 'em who's boss. She was only 9.5. The 2 years she'd spent in the hyperbolic time chamber having served her well in regard to her younger sisters. That third wish on the Namekian Dragon Balls had its purpose after all. The chamber could now be used a grand total of 4 times before it was sealed to you forever. Any further than that was beyond even Porgona's newfound power. 4. Ha! The irony was not lost on him. Still, Hinata was making him quite proud. She'd only begun to struggle under 500x normal gravity, a setting that strained him even in his base state. That pleased him to no small length, but he could see that her black gi was beginning to stain with sweat, her cheeks reddening with the exertion. Of course, he only ever trained with his girls one-on-one. The last time they'd trained together, those 4 tykes had very nearly knocked his block off, and he thought Otherworld had some strong fighters, although he had picked up some interesting techniques the last time he'd visited. "Daddy!" Hinata whined, reminding him that for all her prowess, a Saiyan child was still a child. "Are you even listening to me?" Maybe. He couldn't quite keep the smile from his face as he watched the little waif from the corner of his eye, her words tugging him back to the present. "And what are you going to do about it? Tell me, how do you plan to hit me, let alone spar, when you can barely move? Your sisters did better than this, you know." "Oh, yeah?" She straightened, panting, eyes flashing at the mention of her siblings and their more unique abilities. Then I'll just have to go super." "What?" Naruto spun on a dime as his daughter began to chant. She screamed and the room screamed with her, jagged streams of light erupting up from the floor, shaking the gravity chamber to its core. The tremor was faint compared to what he could truly do, but it was there as she erupted in a flare of gold, her dark locks standing erect and on end. Seafoam green eyes regarded him cheerily, a bright grin overtaking her whiskered visage as she stared him down. She was smiling, he realized, completely in control. And he knew that smile. It was nothing good. "Of course," he muttered to himself, grimacing as her power continued to grow. "It's a Super Saiyan bargain bin sale." Little Hinata grinned. "Here I come, Dad." The blonde blanched. "Hey now, there's no need to get so excited." Gah! Naruto twitched slightly as a sparking fist displaced the air where he'd been mere moments before. Backpedaling, he blocked them all, with some effort, his hands a furious blur of motion as he bobbed and weaved into and through the storm that was his daughter. Then one tore through. His head snapped to the side, shock overtaking his features when those clenched knuckles ground into his visage. Then anger knotted his visage. Before he could think to stop himself, he lashed out, violently booting his eldest in the stomach with all the force he could muster and flinging her across the room. She crumpled like a sack of potatoes, whimpering softly. Naruto froze, his legs still hyperextended, shock twisting his features in an unreadable mask. And then, impossibly, Hinata sat up. Hot, fat tears welled up in the corner of her eyes, her lower lip already beginning to tremble. "You didn't say you'd hit back, Daddy." "Break my heart, why don't you?" "Gah, did I hurt you?" "Yes." "Then dry your tears," he muttered, rising. "We're going out for ramen now." "Now?" She hiccuped softly at the mention of her favorite dish. "Now!" Naruto reaffirmed. "Yatta!" Just like that, Hinata was up again, brushing off his kick as though it were nothing. Naruto felt his left eye twitch. Had she really not been in any pain at all? Was it only the shock of being struck that had caused her to cry? If so, he had good reason to worry. These little tykes would be catching up to him at this rate. It was a strange life he had for himself. 3 women and 4 children competing with powerful aliens to prove that he still had it, all the while wondering if Dr. Jiro's dark dream would ever come back to haunt him, thanking God every day it didn't. Yes, what a strange, beautiful and peaceful life he led. And it was all about to come crashing down. Deep within the bunker, the coffins began to stir. Gears whirled and twirled, the master computer uttering commands to a trio of machines that had long laid dormant. It had measured the newfound power levels over the last 7 years and adjusted its calculations in accordance. Now it was time. Commands had been given. Targets are seized. Dr. Jiro's vengeance would be had on the scions and the units that had betrayed him. And LL would be as it was meant to be. Cold, dead eyes shone in the dark as they strode forth, the 2 lesser units flanking the superior model. A single sentence was uttered from the man's mouth. "It is time." Chapter 17. Ghosts of the Past, Evil Was Afoot. The human saying might be cliché, but Dende couldn't think of a better term for the disquiet he was experiencing at this moment. He'd felt it for several days now, a lingering sense of dread that seemed to creep up on him with each passing hour, threatening to strangle him entirely. Worse, he couldn't seem to pinpoint it. Did it have something to do with the upcoming tournament? Or was it something darker? Part of him, a very large part, longed to inform the Z-fighters of what he felt might be a new threat, but who was he to tell? And would they even believe him? After all, there was no real evidence that this wasn't simple paranoia. Many powerful fighters, several of which were good friends, would be gathering in one place a week from today, and perhaps he was merely worried for the destruction they might cause to the Earth should any of their battles spill out of the ring. Naruto had been insistent that nothing would go that far. And yet this niggling sense of doubt continued to plague him. If not fear for the tournament, then what was it? And whom could he tell? Piccolo had been deep in meditation for several days now, in the deepest reaches of the lookout, having requested not to be disturbed. Supposedly, he was trying to unlock some new level of power through intense focus or something of that matter. Vegeta had taken to space for some sort of special training only yesterday, swearing that he would return upon the day of the tourney. Likewise, Naruto was off preparing his children for an encounter of their own, the strange source of his rare chakra Kai making them almost impossible to trace. Worse, Broly and Son Goku were nowhere to be found. He wanted to think that they were merely suppressing their energies, that this nameless threat hadn't struck them down when they were least expecting it. Gohan was the only one he could sense, but his old friend probably had matters of his own to attend to. Still, surely there was someone he could talk to about this besides Mr. Popo. Anyone, if only to ease the burden weighing on the young man's mind. He wanted to go back to the simple times of a month before, when they'd first gotten word of the tournament. A flashback. The gang was all here, assembled on the lookout to share the good news. Even Yajirobe had deigned to show, with Korin tow. In the distance, he could see the children playing while Gohan played chaperone, the young man trying valiantly to keep the little tykes in line, but to no avail. He was outnumbered 9-1. The most he could do was keep them from firing off energy blasts during their little playfights. By the ancestors, he never knew human young could be so energetic. He was beginning to understand why Piccolo wanted nothing to do with the concept of love. "Hey, hey!" Naruto grinned like a Cheshire cat, his loud voice momentarily calling all eyes to him. "Listen up. All righty then, ladies and gentlemen," he began merrily. "Place your bets now. Who'll be the one to win? Winner takes home 1,000,000 zeni. Because let's face it, old Veggie here doesn't have a chance in hell." His chest puffed proudly, preening like a... What was that human bird? Aha! A peacock! I say my little Hinata, Akatane, Atsui, and Zell are going to wing this without breaking a sweat. Let's face it, I've got the advantage in numbers. And given just how much they've been training, we've got this on lock. Zangia finished proudly, one hand drifting to her still flat stomach. Dende didn't need to look to know she was with child. He could see in the way she carried herself. So strange. For the longest time, he'd assumed that humans merely spat up eggs when they wanted to reproduce. The idea of a female carrying their young in their stomach for 8 or 9 months was disconcerting. So too were the attentions that Naruto seemed to lavish on her. If he didn't know better, he'd say 18 was actually a little upset by that. Must be a human thing. Vegeta snorted derisively, eyes rolling at the insinuation. It's quality, not quantity that counts, woman. My trunks and bra will be the ones to sweep the junior division. They're true warriors, not like those 4 half-breed pups you dote on so. 7 years had done much to mellow the proud prince once he would have tried to incineration Naruto for such an insult. Now he merely scowled at the smirking shinobi. What did that fool know that he didn't? And why was he grinning? Bahahaha! You have no idea how wrong that sounded. Quiet, fool. Hey, Goku chided, not enjoying being left out. Gorton has a chance, maybe, Broly grunted, the beginnings of a smile playing at his mouth. Wrong, Kakarot. Russell and Fasha will be the ones to emerge victorious. What? The twins? Krillin exclaimed. You mean those little firecrackers are actually competing? Oh, shoot, my poor Kisa doesn't stand a chance. Marin's gonna kill me. The others were too busy crossing themselves to notice their friends' lamentations. They were positively pallid at the idea of Broly entering his progeny into the tournament. Denda shared their worried sentiment. While Broly had worked to keep his deadly impulses in check, his children were just that. Children. Who knew what they could do? Still, it was with a rueful smile that he proclaimed, "How bad can it be?" End flashback. Ah, yes. Simple times. Times of friends and family when the worst he had to worry about was a broken bone or two, not this terrible dread looming over him. What's got you so twisted up? Mua! The Namekian jumped slightly, fumbling with his staff as a pair of sneakers settled down beside him, effortlessly alighting upon the lookout. He found himself staring into a pair of crystal blue eyes framed by ebon tresses, a mouth curled in a slight smirk. Despite his relative ease, the Guardian of Earth still managed a slight scowl at his compatriot. Why do you always do that, 17? Because it's fun. The man shrugged. Not much else to do up here anyway. So why the long face? It's nothing, Dendi muttered curtly. Probably. I've just got a bad feeling. Hey, if you're worried about the tournament, don't be. Those kids know what they're doing. His grin grew as something occurred to him. Hell, I'd be more worried about Goku and the others, Dendi groaned. Truth be told, he hadn't thought of that. If Goku or Naruto really got going, they'd need a whole planet for the ring. And that was taking Broly and Vegeta out of the equation. You're making this worse. It's what I do. Jabs aside, ever since he'd learnt he was an uncle, the android had been most proactive in protecting the planet. Like his twin sister, he'd experienced a stranger power increase of sorts. After being freed from cell power, he put to good use in his services as a Z-fighter. He'd learned to sense key and actively control his new gifts instead of misusing them for his own amusement. It seemed the one-time enemy of Earth truly had turned over a new leaf. He was even a bit of a family man himself now. Rumour had it he'd settled down with a nice farm girl somewhere in the country and gotten a job as a forest ranger. Lapis liked to mess with others every now and again, subtle jabs and brash pranks, but his current antics were a far cry from the destructive behaviour of 7 years past. Yeah, I've been getting headaches lately, the Blackette confirmed with a grimace. It's probably nothing. Denda wondered if the android's migraine had anything to do with this. His words died away as a surge of hot and furious energy, leagues distant, assailed their senses. Hey, did you feel that? Denda bristled nervously, green fingers wrapping tight around his staff. Gohan's energy had just gone through the roof. Far too high for a simple spar. When one considered they couldn't sense who he was fighting, the odds of his attacker being of human or alien origin shrank to nothingness. And then, like a supernova galaxies distant, he felt Naruto's ki shoot up in a fierce flare of attention, tinged with anger and distress. Something was happening. Something terribly, horribly wrong. I've got a bad feeling about this. Minutes earlier on Mount Paozu. Hiya! Son Gohan laughed and ducked beneath the small fist even as it shot forwards, batting aside the blow with ease before striking out with a heel of his own. Not one to be outdone, his opponent somersaulted beneath the swift strike and bounded toward him, making use of his smaller body to slip beneath his guard and swipe at his chin. The blow struck could barely even be considered a glancing one, but it was struck nevertheless proof that he still had much to learn. Even in his base state, it was somewhat remarkable, and his little brother was only a super saiyan. "Darn it, bro," he muttered, rubbing his cheek half-heartedly. "When did you get this fast?" Garten grinned. "I've been doing lots of play fights with Trunks and Bra. What do you think? I think if you keep hitting like that, you're gonna bruise someone." "Me," the elder scion worried his jaw with a slight frown. "Dang, if I'd known he'd gotten this good, I would have used a clone for this. Learning the Keiga Bunshin, that is." Shadow clone technique all those years ago had been more than just a boon. It was a blessing. Although it was really the only chakra-based technique he knew, and despite the fact Naruto had been unable to teach him anything else beyond that jutsu, his outlook on life had been drastically altered because of it. Deep down, he was still the same pure warrior who fought for truth and justice, but the naivete that had once defined him had long since been burned away, the crust peeled back to reveal the iron beneath. He was hardened. It had changed his life, and he had Uzumaki Naruto to thank for it. Not only did it allow him to study and train at the same time, but he'd learned to work it into his fighting style as well. Dad really didn't like it when he got ambushed by a horde of them. Thankfully, his limit was 6. But if not for that jutsu, who knew where his life would have taken him? He might have ended up as some nerdy schoolboy. Just the thought of it made him shudder. First had come the strange technique that allowed him the best of both worlds. Then came the most brutal beatdown of his life. He'd nearly died at Naruto's hands one that fateful day before awakening his potential in a blaze of fiery glory. And then he'd gone and surpassed even that only a day later, proving that there were always greater heights to reach, new powers through which one might ascend. Gohan understood that. He saw that power, and a part of him yearned to test himself against it. Thus, over these last 7 years, he'd strived to keep at his peak. But was it enough? Even after all this time, was he truly at his maximum? From time to time, the whiskered warrior had hinted that there was a way to achieve the same power he had, the overwhelming, near-godlike might of Super Saiyan 4. But he'd always been vague on how to achieve that form. Gohan surmised that it required a tail and the full moon. But thus far, despite his own having strangely regrown over the last year, he daren't try it himself. The furious great golden ape had nearly destroyed the earth when it first emerged, and he had no desire to revisit that eventuality in his own body. What if he couldn't control it? What if he couldn't stave it off? No, the risk was too great. Oh, but the prize. Speaking of prizes, he was beginning to wonder if this tournament was a good idea. Vegeta and the others had all but jumped on the bandwagon when he'd announced his intentions to compete. But what choice did he have? It had all started a few weeks ago on a Monday morning, all because he'd intervened against those bandits. Instead of posing as the great Saiyaman, costumed crusader and warrior of goodness, he'd instead masqueraded as the gold fighter since that fateful day. In a way, his flamboyance was the reason he was training for this tournament in the first place, ever since this persistent pushy girl named Videl had found out about it. The daughter of Hercule, someone who might have been a great celebrity in a different universe, she was instead just another girl, though stuck on the idea that it had all been some horrible trick of some sort. That aside, she would have been much of a bother if she hadn't made the damned ultimatum. She'd threatened to reveal his identity to the world if he and Naruto didn't compete. Naruto, because she wanted to see her father prove that he was the strongest in the world, and Gohan because, according to her, why the hell not? Gohan couldn't have that now, could he? Naruto was already a bloody celebrity, and one hounded by press at that. He had no desire to experience that for himself. So if she wanted him to compete in the world tournament, fine. And if she wanted to fly, also fine. Of course, there was one perk to it all, if you could call it that. Oh, Gohan. Heads up. With a rare yelp, the eldest child of Son Goku ducked under another backfist. This time it wasn't Goten. Auburn brown hair danced in his peripherals, cloaked in a crimson aura. Kaioken. She'd been adamant on learning it, if only to keep up with him in his base state. And for a human, she was extraordinarily durable. After only 7 years, she could nearly boost her Kai to 20 times its original limit. He wasn't entirely sure just how strong her Kai was, but as they discovered, it was enough to pound someone like Yamcha into the ground. Poor Yamcha. The little hellion responsible for all this, you ask? Lime. Dodging aside, he lost his focus and ended up tripping on a root and smacking face first into the ground. She cut to a stop behind him. "You're such a klutz!" Lime laughed unabashedly. It was a rough sound, husky and breathy. Her eyes crinkled in pure enjoyment. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, and her teeth are exposed. It was a completely real, genuine laugh, and Gohan was momentarily transfixed by it. She wasn't that same little girl he'd met all those years ago, and he wasn't that same naive boy. He'd be lying if he didn't consider her attractive. There was a certain charm about a girl who lived out in the country. Her long, dark hair, chestnut-coloured eyes, a fighter's body, and those long legs. "Down, Gohan," he reprimanded himself. "Focus! Need a hand?" she asked. Groaning, the Demi-Saiyan allowed her to help him up, all the while dutifully trying to ignore the way her body pressed up against his. The two of them had a very strange sort of relationship, both having met only a few days before the Cell Games. He'd never forget that spunky little girl he'd saved from the rampaging river. She'd shouted at him back then, and he'd shouted back, and a strange bond had formed. Somehow their friendship had endured through the years, even through all the awkward moments that came with puberty. Lime was probably the closest thing he had to a girlfriend, really, even if they'd never admit it. But this Videl complicated matters in all the wrong ways. Lime loved fighting. She had ever since she was little. Videl also loved fighting, but she was nearly as pushy as his mother. He knew that sooner or later a choice would have to be made between the two of them. After all, he didn't have Naruto's luck when it came to women. How that man managed to keep 3 wives under control was beyond mystifying. And apparently he had a son on the way by Zangya, which meant the man's little family was about to get even larger still. Less slacking, Gohan. More training. Goten called, drawing him back to reality. "Come on, you two, gimme a..." Black eyes narrowed a split second before all hell broke loose. Faster than the speed of light, his hands shot out, snatching up Lime and Goten, then leaping away. And not a moment too soon. No sooner had he become airborne than the secluded grove in which they'd been training burst into flames. That wasn't a grenade or an explosion just now. That was an energy blast. Releasing his grasp on both brother and most cherished friend, his eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of the odd attack that had seemingly come out of nowhere. There had been no energy in it, no Kai for him to sense. Which meant, "Behind you," the Demi-Saiyan sput at Lim's shout, just in time to eat a boot. Whomever they were, they packed a wallop. The kick slammed into him with all the force of a truck, sending the Saiyan shooting into the ground like a spear from heaven. He skidded for several miles before he finally realized what was happening, his body grinding to a vicious halt amongst the rocks. "Hey!" Goten shouted. "Nobody does that to my brother! Stay away from him, Goten. He's stronger than he looks." The warning came too late. A contemptuous backhand sent his little brother rocketing into the earth. He did not rise again. Lime cried out and dove after him, only narrowly avoiding a similar fate. "You'll pay for that!" Gohan snarled and threw his feet to the earth in a mighty heave, kicking away the debris binding him. In a second, he climbed over them and cleared the distance between himself and his attacker. He was a big brute of a man, his skin pallid and grey, hair dark as night and bound in a braided ponytail behind his back. A single brown pauldron covering his left shoulder, a green toga his lower torso. His face a foot from his attackers, the son of Goku flashed into a Super Saiyan, grabbing his opponent head-on. "Who the hell are you?" he growled as they grappled. "I'm not sensing any energy from you." The muscle-bound man said nothing for a long moment. Then, finally, his sickly-looking face drew down in a rictus of a scowl. "Where is Son Goku?" Gohan frowned, pushing against him, sneering as he felt the wires and circuitry beneath his hands begin to break. "My dad's not here right now. I'm afraid you'll have to settle for me." There was a moment of silence as the bulky beast seemed to process those words. Light danced behind its eyes. "Then perhaps you can tell me this. Where is Android 21? What do they want with Naruto?" "I'm not telling you that." Another grating moment of muteness. Then those eerie yellow eyes flashed red. "Then you will die, Son Gohan." Before his very eyes, the android did something unthinkable. It began to transform. Meanwhile, many miles towards the north, "Rah!" A defiant shout ripped through the air, shattering icebergs into Thossuan shards, disintegrating them before they could sink into the sea. Naruto observed his work with some trepidation for a moment, before releasing his transformation, golden hair falling slack on his head, teal eyes returning to their true blue. His lips lifted in a slight smile as he turned his head, sapphire orbs seeking the shock of orange hair hovering only a foot or so behind him, her amber eyes wide in surprise. "And that," he grinned, "is how you use a ki." They gave a high-pitched squeal. "That was awesome!" Naruto couldn't quite keep the smile from his face as he watched his 6-year-old do a little dance in the air. Her thick white parka made her look like a dancing bear of sorts, he thought. Zell took after Zangya in several respects. She shared her mother's gender, bright orange hair and faint blue skin. But that was where the resemblance ended. She was an Uzumaki girl, all right, through and through. Her boundless energy reminding him so much of himself during his youth. She'd had to work for everything she knew, from her mother's energy bonds to the recently learned instant transmission technique. And it made a little hellion out of her, it did. Once she figured out how to transform, she'd be even stronger. His only regret was that they had to train in such extreme conditions. The North Pole was a lot cooler than he would have liked, but his body remained warm and alert beneath the burgeoning aura of his ki. Out here, there was no risk of collateral damage while he trained, unless one counted the occasional polar bear and a couple of penguins. It was, perhaps, the perfect place to help his children train with their seemingly infinite techniques and ability. That Dr. Jiro may have been a mad genius, but he knew how to build a body. It was a miracle he and Samui could even have kids given the extent of their genetic reconstruction, let alone 18. Zangya, being a creature of flesh, had no such constraints. He'd been doting on her as of late, much to 18's displeasure. That was something he'd have to attend to before it got out of hand. The last thing he had in mind was neglecting his girls, after all. Still, imperfect though he might still be, his new form was a far cry from the Enugu guzzling machine it had been 7 years ago. Super Saiyan 4 was only the beginning. There seemed to be no limit to what he could do now. Part of him suspected there was an even higher 4, a level of ki that surpassed his ultimate transformation. But how for him to reach him it? He knew in his very bones that there was a realm above the kai he was using. He'd felt it once using Sage Mode, glimpsed it in his peripheral. It was there. Surely there must be a way for him to grasp that newfound power. Speaking of peripherals, I wasn't expecting visitors. He spoke softly, his eyes still staring down at sea. "Tuss, why don't you stop hiding and come out?" The faintest whisper of motion was his answer. "Well, shoot." A rough, accented voice snickered at his back. "How do you know I was here?" "No key," he observed, tapping a hand to his orange-lidded eyes. "But I could sense your foul intentions a mile away." Another laugh. "You're really making this too tempting for me, partner. And here I was, going to wait until I had you alone. Guess this is good enough." Turning, he found himself face to face with a rather odd-looking fellow. The man looked like he ought to be freezing, his bare chest covered in an open jacket that not only exposed his upper torso to the elements, but his brown gloves and green trousers did hopelessly little to compensate. And there, emblazoned upon an old ball cap he wore, an insignia that turned his blood to ice water in its veins. Red Ribbon Army. A bit of code flashed through his brain, the tiniest bit left of Jiro's programming, revealing to him the identity of his attacker. His whiskered face dimpled in a frown. "You're Android 13, aren't you?" His lips quirked in a snarl, exposing pearly white teeth. "What's an old piece of scrap like you want with me?" The man laughed. It was a surprisingly unpleasant sound. "To kill you, fool! Why else would I be way out here in the boonies?" "Please. You're not even a warm-up." Faster than the eye could see, he flung his hand outward, engulfing 13 in a blast of white-hot energy. Imagine his surprise when his adversary batted it away. The beam travelled harmlessly past his Schudler, streaking across the horizon before impacting on a nearby berg some yards away. The subsequent explosion was like an atomic bomb, lightening the men in deathly red glow, their shadows stretching wildly until the blast finally dimmed, then died altogether. Naruto lowered his hand slowly, inwardly fighting not to display the shock shooting through his system. 13 was weaker than him. He shouldn't have been able to block that, let alone redirect it. Surprised? The white-haired lifted his cap and dusted it off, exposing bright blue eyes and a malevolent sneer. "The doctor's supercomputer made quite a few improvements to us over these last few years. We've got all sorts of data on you and your little friends. not to mention your tricky little transformations. That's right, he growled. You're outdated now, boy. A relic. Thing of the past. Why, I reckon I'll even be able to take you down myself. Your girl's there is even less of a threat. Beside him, Zell gulped and darted behind his leg. She didn't like the way this man was looking at her. Daddy! Naruto blinked quickly, risking a swift glance down at his progeny. He'd almost forgotten about his youngest. He knew full well she could handle herself in a fight, but the merciless gleam in 13's eyes told him that the man would pull no punches. If she made the slightest mistake... Sweetie, it's time for you to go home, he said. But I can help. I said go. Gulping, she pressed 2 fingers to her forehead. Concentrating, she focused on the energy of her mother and her sisters, their ki shining like a bright beacon in the back of her mind. You're not going anywhere, Missy. Zell yelped as a hand closed around her hair straight to the scalp and pulled, wrenching her up and away. Naruto rounded on him only to get a face full of ki for his troubles, the crimson blast picking him up and throwing him down into the bitter cold waters below. Seconds later, the explosion dyed the waters red with its energy, and then she was alone with her tormentor. She kicked out against him, but to no avail, he simply sneered at her, unflinching before her blows. Her energy bonds only elicited a grimace. Shit, that actually stung a little. He cackled, breaking free not a moment later. But playtime's over. A hand was flung before her face, fingers splayed. Crimson light gathered in his palm, the energy warm on her face in the chill afternoon air. Nice knowing you, kid. Aura. Naruto was suddenly there, socking the android square in the face with enough force to physically bend the man's neck backwards. In an instant, she was free, turning just in time to watch her father jump into the form of an ascended scion. Bolts of terrible lightning coursed around his body, Jaden eyes leering furiously ahead at his adversary. To her horror, the android simply wrenched his neck back into place, cracking the joints as effortlessly as one would flex their arms. Her father barked a single command at her. Go! In the blink of an eye, she did. Damn. 13 growled, eyes flashing in a rare bout of anger. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. You think she's safe with 18 and 22? She's walking right into it. What? Naruto permitted himself a small frown, a bead of sweat rolling down his face. He'd put a substantial amount of energy into that attack, and his predecessor had swatted it away like a fly. He was still certain that he could trounce the older android in a fair fight, but a very small part of him worried. 13 had just mentioned his family. A snake of dread coiled in his gut. Damn it! The little bastard knew. And if Jiro's mind was anything less than a genius of his, who knew what this model, what any of them, might be capable of? Just how upgraded were they? What are you talking about? He challenged. The man smirked. Let's just say that the dear old doc isn't quite as dead as you think his is. His computer doesn't just think it's him. It is him. He took a scan of his brain and copied it into the machine. Every thought he would think, every plan, bam! He touched a finger to his head. All right there. And we both know the bosses can hold a grudge. See, if someone decided to go and crush my skull, I'd be mighty pissed off, you know? So the good doctor's gonna wipe them out. Starting with your family. His voice dropped into a snarl, his good-natured gon leeching away. We're gonna make you suffer, traitor. Trust me when I say I'm just the tip of the iceberg. I'd tell you more, just to see the look on that ugly mug, but my programming keeps me from spilling the beans. Tough luck, Burke! His words died away as crackling fist plunged into his lower torso, exploding out his back in a shower of sparking circuitry and artificial fluids. Naruto had wasted no time. The Super Saiyan 2 had gone straight for the death blow off the bat. His counterpart bent double, his body sagging over the larger man until they were looking one another in the eye. That's my line, he growled. Nice, try. 13 choked, a dribble of blood trailing down his chin. But you're not the only one with the fancy light show. With a mighty gasp, he tore himself free, still clutching at the gaping hole in his stomach. In the blink of an eye, the wound closed, flesh moulding over the ragged tear. Naruto couldn't help himself. He gawped. No, that shouldn't have been possible. As a Super Saiyan 4, a blow like that had crippled Cell in his super-perfect form, and while Super Saiyan 2 packed significantly less of a wallop, 13 shouldn't have been able to recover from that. What? 13 cackled, straightening before his very eyes. Idiot! Did you think you and Cell were the only ones who could regenerate? Now it's my turn. Used to be I couldn't do this without 14 or 15. Thankfully, I don't need those fools for this after my upgrades. His smirk grew until it was bordering on outright piscosis. I don't need anything now. Ha! Before his very eyes, the man began to bulge and grow, his white hair standing on end and stunning crimson. Muscles swelled and strained, his skin staining itself a deep shade of the navy, and his torso continued to swell and grow beneath the new power coursing through his veins. It wasn't long until he towered over Naruto, those empty yellow eyes leering down at him with nothing less than pure malevolence. A sudden frown curled at the edges of the now Super 13's mouth, his expression turning calm and severe as he looked on. Now then, traitor, he began in a voice that sounded like a slow-moving avalanche. Are you ready for round 2? Naruto scowled. Bloody hell. In West City. Somebody! Zell's sudden shout shattered the idyllic afternoon, throwing everything out of balance. The hybrid burst out into the front lawn with a startled yelp, speaking almost before she'd managed to wrest the door open. Samui creaked an eye open from where she lounged in her hammock, wondering what all the commotion was about. What could have possibly caused such havoc? Bah! Let Zangia and 18 figure it out. But then Akatane was shouting with Hinata, and now 18 could be heard swearing, leaving Atsui sobbing, so finally, the level-headed shinobi decided to do something about it. Leaning herself out of her resting shade, she pressed her fingers down on her white sundress, smoothing the creases idly as she rose to her feet. What's all the ruckus? Oomph! She'd made it all of 2 steps before her twins barreled around the corner from the front lawn and smacked into her with enough force to stagger her backward. With one hand she steadied them, her ears already filtering out the chatter of her children as they fought to explain what was happening. Even then she took a moment to marvel at him. Her girls were the perfect blend of her and Naruto, pale skin and whiskers, their eyes somewhere between azure and sapphire, but their temperament couldn't have been different. Atsui had her father's patience and hated standing still. Samui recognized her at once despite the girl's frantic chattering and fumbling over words. Akatane was slightly more calm, though those frantic glances she shot over her shoulder suggested that she too was equally distressed. Something was going out front, something they didn't want her to see. Androids! Papa! Attack! They continued to speak at a rapid pace before she finally raised a hand. All right, what happened? Slowly this time. Use your words. They told her. In slow and halting tones, with each word, she felt her heart sink deeper into despair. The level-headedness that once came so easily to her all but drained away in the face. Naruto had been attacked by a man who claimed to be an android, and according to Zell's precognition, they were going to come under attack soon as well. Very soon. The thought lodged a spike of ice in her heart. That damn Jiro. He never gave up, did he? Reassuring her children that all would be well, she hurried them back from whence they came. Boom! Everything was suddenly in motion, the world spinning and burning around her. Pain flared in her leg, searing agony shooting up her thigh and into her heel as she rolled away. Out of the corner of her eye, Zangia took flight, raining potshots down on an unseen foe. Dragging herself upright, she risked a glance down at her injured leg. Still serviceable, but it would take her a good amount of time to heal. For the time being, she was a dead weight in this fight. That was when she saw them land. One looked like a clown with his funny hat and strange purple skin. Tiny compared even to the children he fought. Next to Haim, Hinata and Atsui looked large by comparison. A second stood beside him, quiet and stoic. 18 blinked, choking in surprise. The other no, that wasn't possible. He looked like him, but not. His green armor was spiked and streamlined somehow, the lower half of his visage sheathed in a mazel. But the face, that hair, those kindly blue eyes, it had to be. 16? She blinked in surprise, starting forward. What are you? Get away from him! 17 shot down out of the sky like a heat-seeking missile, just as the android raised an arm, crashing into the back of their old comrade before he could take so much as another step. The key blast meant for Samui veered wide instead, singing a few hairs away from her face, as it roared into the kitchen to detonate catastrophically against their cutlery. The man-made giant staggered a single step at the unexpected assault. Nothing more. Clicking, his head turned, and Zangia let loose. Her hands shot out, wires of energy lancing forth to restrain the behemoth. Akatsana bounded over her, her hand cradling something that was neither chakra nor ki but a deadly combination of the two. Rasen Shuriken! The giant bucked and shook himself free at the last instant, catching the spiraling shuriken of doom even as it was flung. A hand wrapped around the shrieking spear, extinguishing it, absorbing. Then he returned fire with all the cold, unfeeling prejudice you'd see in one of those old Terminator movies. Akatane yelped, Dusacking for cover. 18 was poetry in motion, bobbing and weaving amidst the shots. Sweetie, go with your uncle. But Mama. I said go! None of you are going anywhere. A soft voice chimed. 18 spun to face the new threat and found herself face to face with herself. It was like staring at a mirror. The woman looking almost exactly like her, she was even wearing her old red ribbon outfit. Garish-looking thing. She much rather preferred the clothes Naruto had bought her, the ones she wore even now. Not those Raggedy Ann pieces. The doppelganger smiled, her eyes flashing an eerie red. Hello, sister. What the hell are you? A small smile curved at the woman's lips. I am you. What Dr. Gero always meant for us to be. We will become one. And together we will destroy 21. 18 scoffed at the copy and her sad little speech, recalling the same words once spoken to her by Cell. Now it came from the mouth of this thing. She'd crush this imposter where she stood, and that would be that. The hell I will. The doppelganger frowned. I thought you might say that. Lazuli. 18 had no way of knowing it, but that word was her name. The code word that Dr. Gero had implanted in her all those years ago. He'd never had the chance to use it before because Naruto hadn't given him that chance back then, taking him out even as the thought dawned in her mind. One word, so simple and innocuous. And yet, in that instant, it wiped out all resistance. And more. Against her will, she felt her limbs fall slack, refusing to obey her commands. Of her own will, her feet trod forward, moving even as she willed them not to. No. Just like that, she was a prisoner in her own mind, helpless, but to obey. No! She tried to move, but only produced the slightest twitching in her jaw. Her eyes searched this way and that, tears stinging at them as she watched 16, Super 16 and the other android ruthlessly attack the only ones she called family. They fought well and hard, but they were losing and, oh God, somebody stop me. We will become one, her doppelganger chanted anew. No! 17 roared. He reached out to stop her, but her arm moved on its own, backhanding him into their home. He did not rise again. 18 wanted to weep. She wished she could, but all she could see was it. That damned copy smiling now, that stupid blank smile that she hated so much already, devoid of any emotion, any reason. She tried to scream as she watched her counterpart begin to glow in neon light, silhouetting her frame. All that emerged was a soft gasp. Then her mind went blank. Chapter 18, Alone. Shuriken. The Super Saiyan roared his fury, thrusting the deadly razor sphere into Super 13's chest with enough force to reduce a city to blasted rubble. The big brute bellowed out a laugh as the deadly attack slammed into him, sending his body plummeting into the sea below in a salty spray. Naruto glared down at his adversary, scowling, gasping as he fought to catch his breath as he settled onto a nearby berg. The water was still now, its ripples having all but finished something's wrong, he rasped, wiping a bead of sweat away from his brow. Even as an ascended Saiyan, it shouldn't be taking me this long to finish this guy. He's not even trying to avoid any of my attacks. It's like he's trying to get hit. Moments later, a burst of crimson fire split the seas and sizzled up into the sky. Naruto groaned as he watched the seemingly unstoppable brute rise from the depth. Great. Here we go again. He stood on shaking legs as he raised his arms back up to a more level position, his limbs quivering as he pointed them at 13, the massive android's cold eyes glaring down from above his confident smirk. Naruto still couldn't seem to bring the behemoth down. Even after just landing a twin pair of Rasen Shuriken, the android was still attacking him with a seemingly endless level of vitality. Nothing that Naruto had done up to this point had seemed to faze 13, and it was starting to make him feel a touch uncomfortable. 15 minutes of this had done nothing to deter his opponent. He doubted a repeat would keep this foe at bay for much longer. If anything, he seemed to be getting stronger as time wore on. Wait a minute! With a shout, he snapped up and fired a blast at 13. The android immediately flung out his arms and caught it in the chest, the ki vanishing as it flowed into his body. Naruto swore. "You cheeky bastard," he growled. "You've been absorbing my energy like Nintatine this whole time." Bingo. 13 rumbled. "Took you long enough to figure it out, partner. But now it's too late." "Fucker! Fight with your own power." The giant hand came crashing down with tremendous speed, Naruto barely being able to dodge the attack as it turned that particular section of the iceberg into a pile of shaved ice. He took off in a flash, hoping to place some distance between himself and the android, and possibly fire off another of his Rasen Shuriken. The sound of movement suddenly filled his ears as the gigantic frame of Super 13 filled his peripheral vision. He snapped his head to the left, but the android had already sprung his assault. The back of his hand swung up from below and slapped the blonde into the air. "Die," 13 said calmly as he jutted both his hands forward, a red blast of energy rocketing out of the center of his palms. The twin streaks roared into the sky like beacons of death, slightly overtaking the afternoon sun in its brightness as they shot up towards the flailing hybrid. "No, you don't!" Naruto yelled as he flashed away the opaque waves of his attack, harmlessly obliterating a cloud into halves, but failing to find the shinobi within. Flickering forward, he landed on the man's shoulders and yanked, sending 13 crashing down back first into the ice. Almost immediately, he found himself face to face with a fistful of energy. 13 quickly dodged out of the ways, the blast obliterating most of his hair as it passed by. The synthetic glanced up at his ruined scalp, the one thing that wouldn't regenerate, and growled. "You little shit!" Naruto cracked a crass grin in the air. Or did Whittle 13 woes his hair? Now 13 had always prided himself on keeping his outbursts controlled, but the slippery Saiyan had managed to elude him for nearly a half hour now, and he'd liked that hair, damn it! Something snapped. "I'll kill you." Stars burst before his vision as the monster landed a roundhouse punch, the blow bloodying an eye and shooting him down into the deep. He hung there in the water for a long moment, cringing slightly as the cold sea stung at his wounds, gazing wearily at the bloodied depths. Damn, he's just too good. I should have gone all out from the beginning. Stupid! Stupid idiot, Naruto! A single kick sent him shooting back to the surface, limbs burning slightly from the motion. Groaning, the Saiyan dragged himself out of water and onto a nearby gneiss. For some reason, he found himself laughing. Ow! He winced, clucking softly despite the pain radiating up and down his spine. Man, I really did give him too much energy. Samui was right. I suck when it comes to using my brain. His blue eyes drifted upward a moment later, watching in bemusement as his killer descended from the skies to land only a few inches his way. "What's so funny?" he growled. "Nothing, really." Brushing himself up, the blonde rose to his feet. He stood woodenly, not taking enough care. "You've been kicking my ass for the last 15 minutes. By all rights, I should be worried. Still, an overly gracious smile shone out from beneath spiky blonde bangs. A hand rose, wiping away a trickle of blood beneath his mouth. Enough was enough. Now that he knew his opponent's little trick, his blood was at a furious boil. Instinct demanded that he crush him immediately, if not pride. Vanity had led him to think he could beat this menace without his full strength. But no more. Time to kick it up a notch. All the notches. All the way until this tin toaster realized the entirety of his mistake. There was nothing more dangerous in this world than an angry parent. And Uzumaki Naruto was pissed. "You made one very big mistake. You threatened my family." Knuckling up, he reached deep into himself, the well of his power, and pulled. Almost immediately, Super Saiyan 3 roared to life around him, but then he went further still. Blue eyes flashed golden, eerie yellow orbs, boring furiously into his opponent. And so it began. A low growl began to build in the back of his throat, growing deeper with each passing second. "Ha!" Columns of golden light seemingly emerged from nowhere, twisting inwards into a vortex of energy, with him at the center, his body enveloped in the blinding glow. 13 frowned, a glimmer of worry becoming visible in bright eyes. Surely this was just a power-up of some sort, an attempt to draw out the last vestiges of his ki. He couldn't possibly take this higher, could he? With a growl, he lunged forwards, determined to destroy this upstart before he could become a true threat. He had to kill him now. The wall of ki said otherwise. A giant, invisible hand reached up and batted him away, stalling his charge before he could come within 3 feet of his prey. Still, Naruto continued to change. Ah! Stop that, goddammit. 13 hollered. Stop that right now. Rah! The light remained just as bright, but receded in volume with the trailing of his furious screams, the glow retreating until it settled around Naruto's body, continuing to obscure his features and making him appear as some kind of reverse silhouette. Gradually, this dimmed too, leaving him standing amidst a circle of churned-up yet solid ice. It had melted, then somehow rapidly frozen again during this sudden unexpected transformation. Slowly he rose on bended knee, glaring bloody red daggers up at his adversary. Super 13 blanched. Impossible. I have no data on this. What is he? 13 looked on, observing these changes. 21 stood a little taller than before and appeared slightly more muscular. More notably, dark red fur stretched from below his wrists to well past his shoulders. His tail the same color and significantly longer. Interestingly, his eyes were now a fierce gold, his hair having become completely dark, the spiked ebon tresses stretching down and up round his head. His visage looked as thought it had been chiseled from stone, a look he'd never appeared in before. There was one other change, which 13's sensors quickly pointed out. His power level had gone through the roof. Even with the energy taken from him, this new form dwarfed him in sheer kai. This might be problematic. I'm done playing with you, the Super Saiyan hissed. What? I said. I'm done. Naruto snapped, his aura flaring a brilliant shade of golden red as he ascended to meet his foe. Prepare yourself. What's that supposed to... The android got no further, collapsing like a discarded doll, vomiting blood and oil. Naruto flashed into existence behind him, clutching the ruined remnants of his left arm and most of what had once been part of his face, as well as his chest cavity. Not possible. His processors whirled madly, struggling to comprehend even as he began to regenerate. Not possible. Nothing in the data he had projected allowed for this kind of strength. What was this? Dumbfounded, the android crashed to the icy ground, his body twitching spasmodically as it struggled to respond to the sudden trauma inflicted upon it. It's over. Even as 13 tried to turn, he heard the familiar keening shriek of the man's ultimate attack. Quivering, he managed to look up with his good eye. It danced in his palm, glowing an eerie onyx color. Something in the android instinctively quailed at the sight of the enhanced energy. The bright blue shuriken sphere snapping and snarling only inches above his face. Fool! He dared a sneer with what was left of his mouth. I will absorb it. With that damage? The Saiyan scoffed. Don't think so. Before his very eyes, the sphere shrank to infinitesimal proportions, no larger than the size of a penny. The energy compacted within could have crushed an entire galaxy. He's right. I can't stop that, 13 realized with mounting horror. Not while I'm Regan. Rasen Suriken. Naruto intoned with a dark rumble, eyes sliding shut. Then they snapped open wide. Times 10. His arm whipped savagely out to the side and the glow of energy arced out, reaching 13's body, piercing his chest cavity and igniting. A raw howl of power emerged from within him, bursting to the surface and rupturing his body from multiple directions at once, systematically crushing his very cell under the immense heat and pressure of a star. No, not like this. He raged impotently against the power shredding his body, a power he could no longer see without his eyes, a force he could no longer feel as his skin smouldered away. 21 must die. To enti na sit die. With a final cataclysmic explosion, Super 13 was no more. Meanwhile, back in West City, ha! 15 blinked, his dark brow drawing down in confusion at the strange figure standing before him. Only moments before the twin sisters had performed a strange dance of sorts, culminating in a flash of light. Now someone else stood in their place, a single individual that was neither girl. Yet, someone else. Super 15 could not find any such knowledge of this technique, or this fighter, anywhere in his databases. Her eyes were a rich teal, her tresses born of the purest saffron, her body garbed in white pants and a vest to preserve her modesty. She voracious shone with untapped power. No data available. That worried 15. If there was no data available on this new fighter, it meant she was a threat to be reckoned with. Yet a part of him, perhaps his own curiosity, still felt obligated as to inquire as to this new one's identity. What
Are you?
She snarled, her voice a flawless blend of both sisters, filled with fire and fury. I am neither Akatane nor Atsui. I am Akitsu, and I will destroy you. Will you now? A new voice chimed. Akitsu froze, her teal eyes bulging. But you're... The newcomer descended upon her mercilessly. Gohan almost laughed when he felt Naruto triumph. The blonde's energy, so twisted in anger and distress only a few moments before, had shot through the roof and was now pulsing at a steady rate. That he could feel the man halfway across the globe simply confirmed his suspicions. His fellow Saiyan had jumped into Super Saiyan 4 and annihilated his enemy. Now it was his turn. He'd favored a cautious approach after this eerie android had transformed and seemingly absorbed one of his blasts. But Naruto's victory confirmed that they had a weakness. Yes, they had weaknesses. They could be beaten. He just needed to find them. Now was not the time for caution. It was time for action. Time to wrap this up. Ha! With a furious shout, he surpassed his limits once more and leapt into Super Saiyan 3, his already golden hair forming a long, lustrous curtain at his back. As always, the sheer amount of power that came with this transformation was humbling. Once long ago as a boy, this strength had nearly intoxicated him. It was a terrible burden to bear such awesome might, to know that you were the second strongest being in the world. If you weren't careful, you could destroy everything, even those you loved. But, when focused, this life-threatening form made you a terror to your enemies. Shock twisted at 14's face. He was still grasping at composure. Their fight had been mostly a stalemate thus far, with the Saiyan giving him very little energy, but he'd stood up to him in close combat. Most of the battle had even begun to lean in his favor, simply because Son Gohan wasn't fully committed to his side of the fight. Now, however, he was more determined than ever, jumping to his ultimate form, his Kai as high as he'd ever dared to push it. Whatever course of action came next, he would be serious and devoted to it. Super 14 wasn't prepared for this. It needed time to recover to this unexpected, unorthodox change in what it had mistakenly assumed to be an easy victory. Gohan didn't give him that time. Faster than the speed of light, he bolted forwards, a power-swollen fist plunging deep into the heart of Dr. Jiro's foul creation, tearing through the super android as though he were made of tissue paper. 14 spasmed, his body bending double. But he didn't stop there. Gritting his teeth, the young Super Saiyan clenched his fingers within his adversary's gut, summoning a brief flare of ki to his clenched hand, even as he shoved it still deeper into the android's gullet. Then he released it. 14 did not take it well. Sparks spasmed from the mountain of a mandroid, golden light soon shining from his every orifice, as Son Gohan continued to flood his circuits with ki. 14's system had never been designed to handle such power. The raw, uncompressed energies of the half-Saiyan proved too much for it to handle in short order. With a final keening shriek, the lesser model imploded in a shower of smoke and otherworldly light, his body erupting in a single solitary flare of brilliance. Another cruel creation of the mad genius was gone. After an eternity, Gohan removed his arm from the sundered cavity and allowed the deadly killing machine to slump at his feet in two severed halves, every circuit systematically fried. Unwilling to take any chances, the son of Goku held up his palms and crossed them over his head. The creature had already recovered once. Who was to say that it wouldn't heal again? Unless he finished it. A single word tore past his lips. Masenko! Light erupted from his palms, rendering 14's corpse so much ash. Another blast and the brutal beast wasn't even that, his body reduced to smoke on the wind. Finally satisfied that the android was gone to a cold void, he dropped back into his base state. Exhaustion pounced upon him immediately, forcing him to drop to a knee. Despite all the training he'd undergone over the last 7 years, Super Saiyan 3 still taxed him beyond measure. It was pure power, second only to Super Saiyan 4, but the cost of maintaining that inhuman ki was always draining. "Whew," he gasped, scrubbing at his brow with the back of a hand. "It's been a while since I got a workout like that." His moment of peace was short-lived, however. "Gohan! Hey!" The Saiyan chooked in surprise as Lime dive-tackled him from out of nowhere, wrapping her arms around his neck. Guten floated a ways behind, rubbing at his head. It seemed the worst 14 had done unto him was give the boy a very sore skull. Then his attention was decidedly elsewhere, was his girlfriend. Ah, if only nuzzled up against him. Warm and affectionate, her voice soothed his wounds and worn body, exuberantly excited to have witnessed such an awe-inspiring battle firsthand. "Ah, that was awesome!" she gushed. "You completely annihilated him." The scion took a moment to bask in the glow of his friends and family. Yet something still nagged at him. He could feel Naruto's ki again. It was in motion, shooting toward West City. Oddly enough, he hadn't powered down. If anything, his ki was even higher than before. In that same direction, he could sense the faltering energies of Zangya and the others. It suddenly occurred to him that there might be more androids out there. The possibility remained that they'd simply chosen other targets. Why do I get the feeling that this isn't over? Hey, did you feel that? Broly turned slightly at the sound of Goku's voice, his jaden eyes intently regarding the sudden drop in Gohan's ki. It was resting comfortably in its base state now, but only mere moments ago it had soared to a height unattainable even for him. Now they could sense Naruto, his presence lit up in their minds like a beacon of warm light, warm and very, very angry. Something had upset the man, but whatever it was eluded them. The pair didn't know if it was simply a squabble gone wrong, or if some darker, more deadly menace had sprung upon the earth while they were away. Both men had secretly snuck off to Otherworld for some equally secret training, without informing either of their wives or receiving their consent. Needless to say, they were intent on keeping a low profile. Chi-Chi was a terror at her worst, but an angry launch, that was something neither of them wanted to see. But if the Earth was truly in danger, Broly shrugged. Let them handle it. Are you sure? His fellow scion seemed hesitant. He might need some help. And if Gohan's gassed, there's no one left to back him up. Bah, he'll be fine. And with that, they resumed their spar. Naruto landed in a war zone. His home stood in shambles, holes piercing the once idyllic Uzumaki household. Craters littered the yawn. Fires burned. He could still hear the radio from somewhere in the kitchen half-heartedly bleating out some jazzy tune whose name he couldn't remember. "About time you got here, Pops." His head snapped toward the voice. Yellow eyes bulged. Akitsu, the fused form of his daughter's. Someone had beaten the tar out of her and left her to lay on the lawn. Her left eye was swollen shut, her arms broken, in 3 places. Bruises littered her body, evidence of a severe beating, not a lucky shot that just so happened to catch her by surprise. Whomever had done this clearly outmatched her. Hinata and Zell could be seen only a few yards away, the slight rise and fall of their tiny chests, the only sign that they still yet lived. And there, sprawled out across the fence, Samui. Zangya. A muscle jumped in his jaw. He hissed. "Who did this?" His fused daughter coughed weakly. "Androids. They took 18 and whatever else she might have said ended as someone bounded out of the smoke toward him." Naruto turned slowly, his hand clenching into a cruel claw. It was a little blue man with red hair and dark sunglasses for eyes. He looked like a clown. The number 15 was tattooed across his cheek. Naruto's brain processed this quietly, as though it were detached from itself, a separate outside entity looking on from above, watching as his body sprang at the android, grabbing him and goring him in a single, smooth movement. Scarce had his fist found its mark than his leg lashed out in an electric blue blur, sweeping the android's head from his shoulders, sending it clattering across the lawn. His body was flung to detonate it harmlessly into the air, spraying him with ash. Naruto barely noticed his demise. So intent was he on his next victim. A weakling like that couldn't have done this. There had to be more. That was when he saw him. The android strode through the smoking ruin of his home, 17's prone form slung over his shoulder. He was a great brute of a man, larger even than Super 13, and he had one of his friends held hostage before his very eyes. That alone should have been enough to spur Naruto to act, yet he didn't. Instead, he froze, his body turning inexplicably rigid as he sighted down his target. He was staring at a ghost someone he hadn't seen for the last 7 years. His heart skipped a beat. 16? Shock slowed his reaction just enough for the super android to strike. Dropping 17, an ironclad fist crunched against his stomach. Naruto frowned at the unimpressive impact, staring down at the fist halted by his superior ki. Slowly, ever so slowly, he raised his gaze. "No," he murmured, eyes narrowing wrathfully. "What, you're not 16? He's a part of me. Which makes you an imposter." Emitting a sound like a deflating balloon, 16 collapsed onto its back. Naruto unclenched his fist, lowering it as he strode after the fake, the imposter, the fraud. Rage shone in his tone. The 16 I knew wouldn't harm an innocent, no matter what. He loved life, he said. You defile his memory with every moment of your existence. Irrelevant. 16 coughed, staying close to the ground as possible as he tensed up to spring. You must die! He vanished from the onlooker's sight, reappearing directly in front of Naruto, roaring with all his might as he forced more power into his right fist, smashing it into the man's face with all of his considerable power. Imagine his supreme surprise then when that very same fist crumbled away, leaving him staring down at his shattered fingers in disbelief. And then he moved. He's going for Zangya. From across the field, he whirled around and his horrified shout echoed across the air. Despite the crippling pain she felt, Akitsu somehow managed to take aim on the android and fired off a string of shots. By some miracle, it was enough to stagger the model. Seconds later, Naruto took a shot of his own at his former friend, stumbling the android even further. As he popped his joints, the super android made a last-ditch effort to take out the Zangya, his good fist shooting forth for his arm, fingers tight and clenched to obliterate the prone alien. It never made it. Someone appeared from the nothing in the smoke, contemptuously swatting his hand away. 16 did not respond to this offense, instead reaching up to catch and realign his arm. His head tilted in the direction that his fist had flown, in silent query. Leave them, 16. A sensual voice purred, her word punctuated by the soft click-click-click of high heels on the broken concrete. He's mine. Acknowledged. The android backed away but made no move for 17's body. Was he waiting for orders? Naruto instinctually readied himself for an assault, but what he saw there took his breath away as he beheld the tall beauty standing before him. If 16 had made his heart skip a beat, this newcomer made it grind to a cold halt. She was 18, and yet not 18. Her hair was long on the right yet short on the left. She wore stockings and high-heeled boots complete with a short blue skirt that flared out across her full hips, leading up to the flat and bare expanse of her belly. He barely registered the gloves she wore. The tiny azure vest and black undergarment covering her round bosom would have drawn his attention in any other case, but not today. It was the eyes that held him. Those crystal-clear blue orbs, the orbs of his love, of 18. He couldn't sense any key from her, but deep in his heart he knew. This was his wife. Spirits, what had they done to her? 18? Her lips curled up in a contemptuous sneer. Hello, husband.